scarcely a sale. In every speech it's the villain they unveil. From racism, patriarchy they rail. Ain't known, ain't nothing, every they prevail. Ushering in their Marxist utopias, the end game. The turmoil and strife they aim to overthrow the old. Establish their claim that the vision they abolish everything. They need capitalism for the pain of clever life. These are the four goals of the woke. In actions, words they evoke. From pushing equality to Marxist dreams in the dance of power, scheme and scheme. In every move, their agenda gleams. Remember, nothing's ever as it seems. So, instrumental. Gain power, destabilize, bring capitalism into the Marxist utopia. That's what they want, that's what they want. Abolish capitalism. These are the four goals of the woke. In actions, words they invoke. From pushing equality to Marxist dreams in the dance of power, scheme and scheme. In every move, their agenda gleams. Remember, nothing's ever as it seems. So,
Oh, well, here we are again. I don't know if we're going to watch these documentaries. You guys are really going to be the ones who decide whether or not we watch these documentaries. I'm going to be perfectly honest. The commitment that I've made is that I will show up for you if you show up for me. Now, I really feel like I don't ask for a lot. I don't sell fucking coffee. I do one ask in the stream, and that's at the beginning, to sign up for the Substack or to buy some merch. I don't do ad reads. I don't shill products that I don't believe in. I don't do anything that is not directly related to, like, you know, just like I do, compared to other YouTubers, I do so little in terms of shilling and all that. I could do a lot more, and I know I could do a lot more, and I've always decided not to, because what I said is I will show up for you if you show up for me. And we're going to talk for a few minutes because we need to give people time to find the stream. And I'll be very honest, not that many people are watching the stream right now. Many more were watching earlier. And we had a little problem in that many more people were watching the stream earlier, but those people decided to not like the stream. Now that might seem like a small deal to you, Colin. Why does it matter? You know, why does it matter? You're like, I'm busy and it's a holiday and I'm watching on my TV and all this shit. Well, guess what? I don't get paid for this. I don't get paid to entertain you. I barely make any money off of YouTube. That's just reality. I make money off my Substack. I make money off my merch store. I barely make any money off of YouTube. And so, if people aren't going to show up, and people aren't going to do the bare minimum of liking the damn video, which is actually important because I'm shadow banned on YouTube, and I feel like I've said this a million times. People are like, Carlin, your videos never show up for me anymore. Okay, do you like them? Do you click on them when they're offered? Because if you don't like them, you're absolutely right. They're not going to show up for you. That's the way the algorithm works. I already had on the previous stream one person who claimed to be my biggest fan, claimed to be watching me for 5 years, which isn't really possible. This channel didn't exist 5 years ago, so they were lying. But I just can't believe you'd speak to your audience like that. And I can't believe I was waiting so long to watch it. Go watch the fucking documentaries on your own. You don't need me to watch the documentaries with you to go watch the documentary. Just go do it on your own. I don't need to sit here for hours out of my day. If you aren't going to do like the basics. So we're going to wait for people to show up, and if people show up to the stream, then we'll watch the documentaries. If people don't show up to the stream, I'll end it again. I have a pathetic amount of people watching this stream right now. So we're just going to wait. People show up, they show up. If they don't, I end the stream, I go do other work. So maybe you should be liking the stream. Maybe you should be sharing the stream if you want to watch the documentaries. And if you guys don't want to watch the documentaries, that's fine too. I can watch them on my own. I don't need to watch them on the internet. Well, though, we're not going to get that far. We're not going to get that far if people don't do what's required. The deal is, I will show up for you if you show up for me. If you don't show up for me, I will not show up for you. That's the deal. That's the bargain that we have. And we already have more likes on this video than the previous stream did when I ended it. Less than half the viewers, because people aren't showing up. But more, I mean, this is the point, guys. You guys wonder why about every 6 months I go, fuck all this, I'm just going to quit and give it all up. This is why. So hopefully we can get some more people in here. I'd like to get some more people in here so we can watch the documentaries. You know, I never wanted to be on YouTube. I don't want to be on the internet. I don't like being on the internet. I really don't like it. I don't like being on video. I don't like having my picture taken. I don't like being a personality. I'm not an entertainer. I'm not going to be an entertainer. It's not going to happen. And so I ask for very, very, very few things when I show up 6 days a week. And one of those things is that if you show up to a stream, you like the fucking video. And I don't care what your feelings are about the video. I don't care if you like the content of the video. You're liking the video because liking it is what's required for YouTube to actually recommend my content to other people. And if you are unwilling to do that because of your feelings, that's no longer going to be my problem. So now we're still waiting. We're just waiting for more people to show up. And people can get mad. You're yelling at your audience. Well, you know, again, I don't actually need to do this. This is not where I make money. This is a very, 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 very tiny part of my revenue. And if people keep not showing up and they keep not doing what's required just because they don't feel like clicking a button, then why should I show up? Can you guys see this from my perspective? Why should I show up and spend dozens of hours a week doing this for free if the people who are showing up to sit here for literally hours watching it are not willing to click a button? Do you guys see my point? There's actually important shit that I need my community to do. And if my community is not willing to show up and click a button, like clicking a button is level fucking 1. I need people at a significantly higher level than that. If you're not willing to do step 1, you're not going to get to step 12. If you're expecting me to show up for hours every day for you, but you can't click a button, that's just fucking lazy, and you're beneath me and you're beneath us. And if that hurts your feelings, go whine somewhere else. All right. We're still not at the numbers that I would like, but let's watch the documentaries. We are watching the Weather Underground documentaries, and we're going to see how this goes. And I'll tell you what, guys, I'll make another deal with you. I will make another deal. We're going to try a transactional experience with the audience for a while. That's what we're going to do. Now, of course, many of you are already supporting my work on the Substack, which is carlin.substack.com, which I really do appreciate. I have 2 documentaries. We're going to watch one of those documentaries. If within the course of the documentary, I hit $100 in super chats, we will watch the second documentary. If within the course of the documentary, I do not hit $100 of super chats, we will not watch the second documentary. Is everyone on board with that? Does everyone understand this? We're going to try doing a transactional thing for a little while. Because, again, I could be doing other things that will make me more money. I will make more money in one Substack membership than I will in $100 super chat. That's just math. If one person sends me $100 super chat and one person signs up for a Substack membership, I make more money off the Substack membership. If 20 people combined send me $5 super chats and I make $100 in super chats, I will still make more money off of one Substack membership. This is math, okay? This is not something that you can argue with. It's just simple math. So the deal that we're going to strike is we're going to watch one Weather Underground documentary, and I'll do commentary on it, and you guys can offer your ideas. And if at the end of the one documentary, there is $100 in super chats or more, we'll watch the second documentary. If there's not, we won't. Oh, Bill, guess what, Bill? Guess what? You just whined in my chat, which means you broke one of my main rules, bro. You broke one of my main rules. No one whines in my fucking chat. I don't care if you're a member or not. You do not whine in my chat. Now, you're relatively new, and I understand that. So this time, you're going to get a timeout if I ever see you whining in my chat again because your fifis are hurt. You can go somewhere else, and you will not be welcome back. Oh gosh, you guys are we're already $25. Look at this. Thank you, bot. Towards part 2, mount the like this time, comrades. Thank you. Beth says I'll get you started with $20. Thank you, Beth. I really do appreciate it. And listen, guys, I understand not everyone can afford to. I really do. I understand that not everyone can afford to. However, do you guys understand that I don't want to work for free? Let's just be brass tacks about it. I don't want to work for free. And so maybe the deal can be for people who can afford it, they can compensate for the people who can't. And that's pretty great when people can do that, right? But you cannot expect me to sit here. See, this is all I'm talking about, guys. Thank you, Moxie. Thank you. Kazmar, thank you. See, this is we're already 50% of the way to our goal. Haven't even started the documentary yet. See, now isn't this nice? Now I don't feel unappreciated. You guys are contributing, and we get to watch a documentary. We got 50 more bucks to go. Let's watch the documentary. See? Thank you, Kristen. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. The first documentary that I have on the docket it's from a YouTube channel called Timeline World Documentaries, and it's called Student Rioters, Who Were the Weather Underground? War and Peace tells the story of radical activists Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn, who founded the anti-Vietnam War group. Thank you, Terry Ann, with the super sticker. I really do appreciate it. The Weathermen at the University of Michigan in 1969, and whose members carried out 24 bombings of government buildings, including an attempt to bomb the United States Capitol, the Pentagon, several major banks and police stations throughout the U.S. And we're going to watch this here documentary, and we're going to find out what the Weather Underground was all about. Thank you all for mounting the like button. Thank you to the people who've already donated $61 in super chats. I really do appreciate it.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this timeline document. Best history.
There we go.
We're already just about at the limits of survival, and going beyond is real catastrophe. And it's
Listen, like I said, if you're a paid Substack supporter, I really appreciate it. You're already doing more than a lot of people. I'm just saying that, thank you, Murphy's Pool. I really do appreciate it.
a very serious matter. The Republican Party in the United States is dedicated to destroying the species. Somebody should say that in those words, because it's true.
That was from Chomsky, right? Hang on. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Destroying the United States.
I want to see what he says about the Republican Party.
The Republican Party in the United States is dedicated to destroying the species. Somebody should say that.
The Republican, so the mentality that these people have is the Republican Party in the United States is dedicated to destroying the species. That's really what they believe. Let's just keep that in mind.
Those words, because it's true.
The remnants of democracy is but a facade. A two-party system creates an illusion of choice, but all too often, neither party has peace, equality, and freedom as their ultimate goal.
Hang on. Zuzu, I really mean this when I say it. I understand that some people can't afford it. I really, really do. You don't need to feel guilty about it. You don't need to justify it. I really do get it. I'm just saying that there are people who can afford it. And I ask those people to step up, and that's it. But you don't need to feel guilty. No justification required. Thank you. I have no idea how to pronounce your name, but I do appreciate it. Look at that. We're already like 76% of the way to the goal. This isn't even hard.
It seems this is just a ploy to get people to support their wars. Nevertheless, such support is not universal, and the march to war and injustice is not without opposition. In 1967, Students for Democratic Society formed in opposition to the Vietnam War. A fraction of the group became known as the Weatherman. It took 2 years until their frustration with seemingly useless protests escalated to the level where they resorted to bombs as a radical means to end the injustice of war.
Weatherman is an enormously significant group, but that's not to say it was a success. In almost every way, shape, or form that you look at Weatherman, it was an abject failure.
No,
The two simple
we got that other Jetty. Guys, we are $4 away from hitting the goal. And we're 2 minutes. See, this is not hard. Everyone's coming through. All right. I appreciate it. We're back. Had a rough start earlier. Had to ban a few people from the channel for whining in my comments, but we're back.
Goals we had: end the war in Vietnam and end racism in the United States. As many people as we mobilized, as many people as we convinced, as much as we did, as much as we tried, we failed
Hey,
at
thanks,
both.
Mark. I appreciate
We did
it.
not end the war in Vietnam.
If you're, the type that wants to occupy a building, Weatherman is the type and the group of people that you're going to look back at.
We're back. See, we just hit the goal. See, this is all it takes. I know how to fucking motivate you guys. Okay, can we just admit this? There have been 2 times when I have ended a stream out of frustration. The first time I ended a stream out of frustration was when no one could define what racial capitalism meant. And as a result of that, Bot literally wrote the definition of racial capitalism on her wall. And Bot and Reagan will never forget the definition of racial capitalism again. The second time I ended the stream was when people refused to mount the like button. We're already here with less viewers and 3 times the amount of likes than when I ended the stream. And we're now up to $116. See, this is all I have to do. Random fact for the day, Barack Obama launched his 2008 presidential campaign in Bill Ayer's house. Well, that doesn't surprise me at all, Nurutute. That is an interesting fun fact. And thank you, Brooks. Thank you. I know it wasn't exactly, it was a little after the finish line, but hey, I do appreciate it nonetheless. Thank you, guys. So we're going to get 2 documentaries tonight. I appreciate that. Yo, you're right about that. You're right about that, Mark. I've been slacking on that. Thank you for the reminder. Yeah, just got to crack the whip. It's all that's required. Okay, I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone. Andrew, I can't afford to do super chats often, but I can do memberships. Keep spreading the truth we need to hear. Hey, Andrew, I really appreciate the membership. Thanks so much. All right, now everyone sit back, get comfortable. We got a couple documentaries to get through.
And I think not just to learn what they did right, but to learn the lessons of what they did wrong.
Thank you, Nick. I do appreciate it.
If you ask an American person or an American teacher, do you think Germany should teach World War II and teach the horrible things that went on? Should it teach the number of people who were murdered and killed during that war? And the answer is, of course they should. Then you say, do you think the United States should teach the history of the genocide against Native Americans? Should we teach how many people were killed in Vietnam? Should we teach how many people were displaced and killed in Iraq? The answer is no, we shouldn't. Yeah. That's pretty amazing.
I ask nicely every single day, but clearly what my audience needs is the angry pledge drive. Like, clearly my audience is motivated by, like, fuck you assholes, I'm going home and going to go do other stuff if you don't want to pay for this. See, I'm learning. It's all about motivation.
Isn't it?
How are you? Have a good day. This fall, in Chicago, we will lead massive demonstrations against the war in support of the Black Panther Party and in solidarity with all political prisoners.
I mean, Bill Ayers grew up in Illinois. He was the son of relatively wealthy parents. Was a student in Michigan in the 1960s, was involved in civil disobedience against the draft in 1965, and he describes that as a moment of his, radicalization. He was deeply committed to backing up his values and his words with action and became more militant over the course of the 1960s. He, as a leader of the Weather Underground, and if you look at some of his rhetoric from the most radical phases of the Weatherman's history, it's, quite extreme, and then became, newly notorious when he published his memoir, which was really the first big memoir of former Weather Underground members. And then I believe it was released on September 11th. That was the official publication date of, 2001. On September 12th.
No shit.
A story about the book.
For real? Bill Ayers released his memoir on September 11th, 2001. I mean, that's just a coincidence, but Jesus Christ.
Where he's pictured stomping on an American flag, and he became demonized.
But you're surely right. If 50 years ago we said, and we did say, the United States is the greatest purveyor of violence on earth, today we would say the United States is the greatest purveyor of violence on earth. I think that the world is swirling and dynamic and changing. It's sometimes hard to see because, 70 years is a long time in the life of a person, but not so long in the life of a struggle.
And things are terrible for most people in the world today. On the other hand, I think it's wrong to say that nothing's changed. The world.
I'm fairly certain that where they're speaking right now is like a revolutionary socialist coffee shop. And I'm fairly certain we've actually watched a Socialism Saturday presented from this same venue. I could be wrong, but it looks really similar.
The world is always changing. So we have to recognize that we'll take different forms, but that many of the things that we take for granted today are because of struggles that came before us.
Well, I've read the books,
Revolution.
the inspiration and the brains behind.
Pop quiz, what does struggle mean? Pop quiz for the chat. When you hear someone say the term struggle, what does that mean? The struggle. The struggle is the revolution. It's the perpetual revolution. It's the glorious revolution. Anytime you see the fist, it's the fist. The fist is not about Black Lives Matter. The Black Lives Matter just appropriated the fist to mean their struggle. But the struggle means the perpetual revolution. It's the perpetual revolution against capitalism. The revolution is always against capitalism. It is never against anything else. We're not talking about that right now, Andrew. Always got to try to bring the Jews into it. You guys always, every time, means the perpetual revolution.
The whole outfit has been my partner of 44 years, Bernadine Dorn.
Gracias, decirlo que a pesar de todos los libros que llevan escritos, que la inspiración y la fuente de motivación, todos ellos, compañera.
Hang on. The very first question people in this country must ask in considering the question of revolution is where they stand in relation to the United States as an oppressor nation, that means a capitalist nation, and where they stand in relation to the masses of people throughout the world who U.S. imperialism is oppressing. Lenin said that imperialism is the highest form of capitalism. That was in a pamphlet.
I mean, we live here in America. See, we're born here in this country too, and the notion that we're
well. So I'm just wondering what a struggle session is. What do you think it is? What do you think it is? How would you guys define a struggle session if we know that the struggle is the glorious revolution against capitalism? What do you think a struggle session is? I have a definition of it, but I want to know what other people think. What is the purpose of a struggle session? Well, this is true too. You guys can still keep sending me money. That's cool. That's cool. But for right now, I want to talk about this. What is a struggle session? What is the purpose of a struggle session? It is revolution through interpersonal shame. Yeah, I think that's part of it. It's struggling people to join the revolution. Yup. It's to control someone's actions. Yup. How to strategize their movement against capitalism? I'm not sure I would say that. Yeah, you can just donate subscriptions. There's an option to donate subscriptions on the Substack. You can find it in the Unwoke Roundup email. Struggle session gathers people to join the revolution, kind of. To focus on counter. So I would say that a struggle session is to utilize social pressure to get people to conform to the will of the collective. Somewhat like in order for the collective to work, you have to have people in alignment with the collective. A struggle session happens when someone goes out of alignment with the collective. So effectively, they're acting like an individual. The collective is still the collective. The collective wants everyone to assimilate to the Borg. The individual is over here being an individual, and the collective's like, no. Individualism is not allowed under their regime. So they have to use interpersonal shame and these emotional manipulation tactics to get the individual to stop seeing themselves as an individual that is autonomous from the collective. They must be assimilated into the collective and made to know that if they go outside the will of the collective again, then there are going to be consequences for it. Yep. A struggle session is confrontation to control someone and get them back into the collective. You've always got to keep this in mind, guys. If you've got a mob coming after you for something unreasonable, then it's on you to be the one to say, I don't have to do what you want me to do. And that can be really difficult. It's really difficult to be on the, I mean, I know I've been on the receiving end of a mob several times. It is very difficult to be on the receiving end of a mob and to say, no, I'm not going to do what you want me to do. But you always have to keep in mind that the goal is to get you to conform to their will, and you are never under any obligation to do that. You will be a part of the blob by force. Yeah, it's a good definition of a struggle session, MacB. Appreciate it.
We're outlaws has got to be put together with the fact that America created us.
One of the leaders was Bill Ayer's future wife, Bernadine Dorn. Other women joined the group in support of these goals. Kathy Wilkerson was one of them. Eventually, her story became the most iconic.
Kenny, I appreciate
After
you.
their small bomb factory blew up an entire 4-story building in the middle of Manhattan, killing 3 of their own, all members of the group were forced to vanish underground.
It's impossible to understand what happened to Weatherman without understanding the context of what was going on in those months in 1968, 1969. A lot of people in the movement began to say peaceful demonstration is just not going to create the type of change that we want. We have to start taking things to the next level. That was what you heard over and over. We have to take things to the next level.
Days of Rage had already taken that turn towards we're going to fight you, and that the point of it was to show how tough we were and how militant we were.
They had proven to themselves the depth of their commitment to militant and confrontational action. And in a weird way, it advanced their vision of turning more and more into a violent revolutionary youth force capable of waging something like guerrilla war in the United States.
The demonstrations began as nonviolent activism. But what if the students had been heard? What if their message had been understood? Maybe such violence could have been avoided.
What? That's just bullshit. Everyone knows that, right? The commentator was just like, maybe if the students had just been listened to, they wouldn't have gotten so violent. Everyone knows that's bullshit, right? The students were always going to get violent. That's what they want. That's the 4 goals of the woke left are always the same. Gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. Destabilization is a goal. Destabilization is not a bug. It's a feature. It's why they do everything they do. There is no amount of listening that is going to change that.
When we draw districts to exclude 89 million people to render them irrelevant because they happen to be minorities in safe seats across the country, that's not democracy. When we suppress the free and equal opportunity of people to vote based on the color of their skin or the party they happen to be in, that is not democracy. No! We have got to fight to get this ideal at the core of our democracy. Again, the ideal of equality.
He doesn't mean equality. He means
I'm here
equity.
because I feel like we have a breakthrough moment in American politics where we actually might be able to effect some change because we actually have legislation in place that could change some things about getting money out of politics, and we need ordinary people to rise up. And like, I'm at the perfect stage of my life, you know.
Hey, Nathaniel, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. I like 2002 Weather Underground documentary. The now late Todd Gitlin had a chilling comment about where the Weather Underground had taken themselves and how dark they actually were. You have to see it. So what is the can you I think, is it just called The Weather Underground? Because I can't play that one on the stream because it's copyright. But like if you can confirm it, I think I know which one you're talking about, and I do want to watch it at some point. But appreciate the super chat. Thank you.
My kids are grown. I just like ready to do something.
Look what that sign said. Look what that sign said. Hang on.
You know, my kids are grown. I just like.
What did that say? I'm sorry. What? What's that word? What's that word right there? With capitalism, people profit from war, gun violence, and rampant toxic something or other. Why does it say why does it say capitalism? They're protesting the war. Why is this about capitalism? Because capitalism is always the target. They believe that capitalism creates all problems, to include war, to include the military-industrial complex, to include everything related to that. And if we just get rid of capitalism, we will get rid of all war. Do you guys see that?
To do something.
I'm here because democracy, real democracy, was taught to Ben Franklin.
Oh, this was in
by the Iroquois Nation.
Oh, shit.
65 years old, never been involved before, and it's time for me to stand up before I go to the other world.
Democracy is for the working class, because democracy is the only thing that the working class can hold on to prevent the rich from taking their life.
When they say democracy, they don't mean the republic like we have now. They mean socialism.
Democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like.
Democracy Spring in April 2016 was meant to be a powerful but non-violent demonstration, in the same way as Occupy Wall Street a few years before. But mainstream media completely ignored the demonstration, even though 2,000 people were arrested at the Capitol. What is not in the news is not happening.
Yeah, that's true.
The words unprecedented have been used by the Capitol Police to describe what took place today. Hundreds of people have gotten themselves arrested in order to raise awareness about the issue of money in politics.
One person, one vote. One person, one vote. One person, one vote.
Now, well, the hashtag Democracy Spring has been trending on social media in the US, and some are also using the hashtag Media Blackout to express their frustration with how little coverage the story is getting in the mainstream media.
Where is CNN? Where is CNN? Where is CNN?
If violent revolution isn't effective and peaceful activism is easily ignored, what is the best way for common people to have their voices heard?
It's a bleak time for working people in this country, and jobs are disappearing. And it's not just because of globalization. Jobs are disappearing because the relentless logic of capitalism is to, the ideal from the capitalist.
There's that word again. I keep getting assured by conservatives that the left never uses the word capitalism. They never talk about capitalism. They only ever talk about white people. And yet here we are, Bill Ayers from the Weather Underground saying that, guys, you know what the real problem is? The real problem is capitalism.
Jobs are disappearing because the relentless logic of capitalism is to, the ideal from the capitalist point of view is lots of production, no workers. And so that's what we're striving toward. You know, Americans are very thrilled to have low prices on goods, but that
Well, Andrew, that's retarded because capitalism is specifically defined by the left as private property ownership. And more than just white people own private property, I do hate to tell you. Also, Bill Ayers is actually a white person and he's railing against capitalism right now, which means the opposite of what you're saying. Capitalism is specifically defined as private property ownership. They mean your ability to own a home, your ability to own land, your ability to own a private business, your intellectual property, your ability to own an apartment rental that you rent out as an Airbnb or something like that. Private property also means parental rights to raise your children the way you want to raise them instead of them being controlled by the state is considered to be a form of private property. Your individual liberties are also considered to be a form of private property. Your ability to have free speech, freedom of religion, that sort of stuff. Other things they want to ban when they abolish all private property to include all privatized healthcare. They do not want any private doctors. They want all energy, all gas, all heating to be controlled by the collective. So no private energy companies, nothing like that at all. They want all education to be controlled by the state. No private education, no charter schools, no homeschooling. All of that would be outlawed as well. That's all under what they mean when they say capitalism. No, he's not Rottweiler. I think he's a groiper. Yup, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Literally, nothing.
That all comes out of the backs of somebody. And so the warehouses that Amazon runs are run like plantations. What we have to do is change our paradigm. We have to talk about work, meaningful work that people can do, not wage slavery, not jobs, but work. And there's
Listen, Rottweiler, I understand what you're saying, but I also want to be like, listen, some of the America First people, the groypers, they're watching the content, they're relatively new to it, they have a different perspective. I feel confident that if the America First people are showing up in good faith and they're listening and they're paying attention, we can articulate to them, and I hope my husband gets whatever that doorbell is, we can articulate to them what is going on in a way that's going to be convincing. Now my dogs are losing their minds because the doorbell just rang for reasons past my understanding. It's 7:00 on a Wednesday. Anyway, be nice is all I'm saying. Be nice.
infinite amount of work to do, to fix the infrastructure, to take care of the elderly, to take care of our neighbors, to grow the food locally, to take care of children. All of this is important work. The fact that it can't be monetized for a profit is what prevents us from organizing ourselves to do that work.
Money, 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 all I ever hear these days. Every song that the DJ plays, talking of a similar situation. Ain't got none and got to get some.
I'm going to go see what's going on at the door. I'll be right back. I'm just going to let the documentary play. Take good notes for me, please.
Gotta have more than I had before. Gotta have more than the man next door. Every day I gotta make some more, some more, some more. Do I live to work or do I work to live? And do I give to earn or do I earn to give? And if I do my best for society, will they care about money or will they care about me? Do I live to work or do I work to live? And do I give to earn or do I earn to give? And if I do my best for society, will they care about money or will they care about? He works early in the morning till way past dark. And the people in power say that he's doing his part. If he works real hard, might make it to the top. But we all know that's not true, so stop talking this bullshit and face facts. Almost all the money owned by the fat cats. Well, telling lies to justify war. They're making all their money selling guns to the poor.
In short, we have the capacity to rebuild our whole planet, filling it with luxury, or we are capable of destroying it totally. The shocking issue of our age is that no one can confidently say which we will do.
If you listen to the rhetoric on Martin Luther King Day, it ends with the I Have a Dream speech in Washington in 1963. King didn't stop at that point. He went on. He tried to organize a movement on class lines, poor people's movement. In fact, he was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee, when he was supporting a public service workers strike, garbage workers strike, planning a march on Washington to establish a poor people's movement. He was, as soon as he moved the civil rights movement from racist sheriffs in Alabama to racism in the North and structural aspects of the society, he was dismissed, attacked, denigrated, and this part of his life is pretty much wiped out of history.
I believe that I'm going to do my job, and I believe that I was born not to die in a car wreck. I don't believe I'm going to die in a car wreck. I don't believe I'm going to die from sitting on a piece of ice. I don't believe I'm going to die because I got a bad heart. I don't believe I'm going to die because of lung cancer. I believe that I'm going to be able to die what I was just the thing that I was born for. I believe that I'm going to be able to die high off the people. I believe that I will be able to die as a revolutionary in the international revolutionary protest struggle. You live for the people. Why don't you struggle for the people? Why don't you die for the people?
We understood that they would be the first to go because they were the young black organization, and very scary to a government that wanted to keep the lid on. In the fall of '69, Fred Hampton was assassinated in his bed. He was the leader of the Chicago Black Panther Party. He was 21 years old, I think. Very charismatic, high energy, hard worker. And a lovely person.
So a lot of the Weathermen worked with the Panthers in Chicago. They knew Fred Hampton personally or had seen him at demonstrations. They were deeply admiring of him. And then on December 4th of 1969, he was assassinated essentially in cold blood by the FBI working in concert with local police.
It took years, 7 years in court, to prove that the murder of Fred Hampton was planned by the Chicago Police Department and the FBI.
It's worth remembering that as soon as he was murdered, the police and the FBI put on a full propaganda.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. There was something going on that had to be tended to. Okay, I apologize, guys. I'm back. Let me know if there's anything I missed, but let's just continue.
And effort to show, and they had a reenactment on television of how the officers just all they wanted to do was deliver a subpoena. They knocked on the door peacefully, and suddenly shots were coming at them, and a shootout ensued. And so everyone, all the media reported a shootout, not an assassination, not a planned murder, but a shootout. And we said, no, this is an assassination. And meanwhile, their propaganda, backed by all their money and all their power, was defining, the situation.
It made us just feel that we had to do some more dramatic moves. We thought of it as putting our bodies between the bullets of the police and Black freedom fighters in solidarity. That kind of crowded out everything else in my life. After that, because I was in Chicago at the time, and I found out about it at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it just kind of shut down all the other possibilities and made me listen to people who've said that we needed essentially to form a clandestine army in the United States. And it was improbable, unrealistic.
A clandestine army. All right, let me show you guys. I have a bit of an unboxing. This has nothing to do with the stream, but I do want to give a thank you, and I'm not going to say who did this, although I think some people can guess who did this. I want to say a thank you because the other day I posted on Twitter that I wanted these knee-high Converse, and I've always wanted these. Hang on. These go back to the 90s, guys. Like anyone who maybe even earlier, but these were in the 90s, and I always wanted these. And they brought them back, and I saw they brought them back, and I said, I think I'm too old to get these shoes, but I still really want these shoes. And then someone bought them for me. So thank you so much to the secret admirer that bought me the knee-high black Chuck Taylors. I really appreciate it. It's so fun, and I'm really excited about it. I've always wanted these, and now I have them. Thank you guys, appreciate it. Okay, now we're being serious. We're getting back to the movie, I promise.
And kind of a crazy thing to say, but under the circumstances, it made sense to me and other people to feel like we had no choice.
And then for the weathermen, especially in Chicago, this was absolutely devastating. Essentially was an act of war against progressive and revolutionary forces, and they became more and more determined to fight fire with fire and step up their plans to take up arms against the American state.
The Black freedom struggle, which was also, entered a phase in the 60s. It was quite militant, quite strong. And what Malcolm X described the situation of African Americans as the situation of a colonized people, a people that were held in bondage.
African Americans are a colonized people. That means they have the oppressive force of capitalism imposed on them by the evil bourgeois.
Very much as an external colony might be held in bondage. But in this case, it was an internal colony. We supported it, and we argued that the role of white people, the role of white Americans, just like our role vis-a-vis the Vietnam War, was to find ourselves in alliance with the Vietnamese, in alliance with the Black struggle for self-determination. Not just.
That's because they believe that white people are the evil capitalist oppressors of everyone else.
For an end to the war, but for the right to determine their own future. The interesting thing about that is the current struggle, the current phase of the African American struggle is once again defining the struggle as a colonial struggle, an anti-colonial struggle.
That means
against an
anti-capitalism.
occupying police force. This is decided by an imperial headquarters, not by the people themselves.
All of that meant capitalism.
Top of the morning. No, it's not a new day, but it's time to wake up. Yes, it's time to wake up. Did you ever wonder about the world and the way we live? Oh, the pieces of the puzzle, they don't seem to fit. The play seems okay cause the actors are paid. Pull the curtain away and reveal the real stage. 1 in every 7 people on the planet doesn't have enough to eat, but somehow we just choose not to see. Try to keep it in perspective, saving all the unprotected. Still the people are neglected. We are all connected. Said, hey, you were free since the day that you came. Won't you take over the world today? You can be anything that you wanna be. Whoa, whoa. I said, hey, you were free since the day that you came. Won't you take over the world today? You can do anything that you wanna do. Oh, oh, but I can see the sunshine. The sunshine. I can see the sunshine. The sunshine. I can see the sunshine.
Between Christmas and New Year's, 1969 into 1970, they held what they called the War Council, sometimes the Wargasm, in a ghetto in Flint, Michigan. A celebration of everything that was Weatherman. A lot of drugs, a lot of group sex, violent speeches with, I guess the most infamous one would be when Bernadine Dorn got up and recalled that this was just a matter of months after the Charles Manson massacre in L.A., and she talked about how one of Manson's acolytes has shoved a fork into the belly of the pregnant actress Sharon Tate as she was murdered. She famously said, put a fork in her, wild. And what happened immediately afterwards was far less known and far more secretive. As the leadership, about a dozen people came together and began actually making plans for what Weatherman was going to do.
We knew that the FBI was opening our mail and following us, and we began to understand that they were putting infiltrators in our organization. We began to feel like it was 1938 in Germany, and we needed to make preparations to survive if the FBI and the police and the government really clamped down on people.
And we splintered in reaction to a tremendous wave of repression, a tremendous sense that we had tried what we knew how to do, what was within our capacity to do, and it had failed. A deep sense of failure, betrayal, and uncertainty. So that was the mood at Flint, was a sense of how do we move forward? What can we do? And it was out of that that the Weather Underground emerged.
Flint was horrible, and I didn't really get it then, and I still don't really get it now. It just was a lot of graphics of guns and weapons, and really was a conference that came out of despair, I think.
For 45 years, Bill Ayers and a number of Weatherman alumni have preached the idea that Weatherman never intended to hurt a soul. That's what Weatherman ultimately became. That's not at all what it was in early 1970.
The months after Flint, as you say, were very important, where they tried to deepen their commitment to revolution, turn from being an above ground organization to at least a semi-underground organization that would engage in some version of guerrilla war. And then some members of the collective in New York, and possibly some members of the organization elsewhere, hatched this plot to bomb a dance of non-commissioned officers in Fort Dix, New Jersey, a military installation close to New York City, a dance, an opportunity to do an extraordinary amount of damage, including killing military personnel and potentially, the ladies that they had brought with them and other staff at the party.
California had done their first action. The Midwest had done their first action. And it became time for New York to do its first action. And its first action ended up being the Townhouse. The group that was tasked with carrying out the violent actions, the bombings, the whatever the heck was going to happen, was led by a young man from Kent State, a university in Ohio, named Terry Robbins, a very intense would-be poet who, in retrospect, many have said had violence in his own life, that he beat his girlfriend, that he had his own troubles.
He wanted to help the world. He wanted to make things better, but he was also angry, and the anger
I don't know the answer to that. That's a good question.
The love at a certain point for him, and I think for many of us, and frankly, I think it's a tricky balance for most people. I mean, most committed people, it's a tricky balance. I often say to students, if you're not pissed off, you're not paying attention. You should be angry. There should be days of rage. But if you're only pissed off, you'll never get to where you want to go. You'll never accomplish, you'll never achieve a better world if you're only angry.
I mean, the Townhouse happened because it was all very badly thought out and thought through. And I think there was a lot of disagreement for one thing, we had no technical knowledge.
Unfortunately, as it turns out, Terry was a much more talented poet and orator than he was bomb builder. That morning, just before noon, Terry was down in the sub-basement of the Townhouse with another young woman, Diana Oughton, building the bombs when one of them went off in his hands. Kathy Wilkerson was one of three other people in the house at that point.
At the moment that the explosion happened, I was ironing sheets right above where the floor above the basement. There was just this huge blast, the room filled with smoke, the floor sank. And I was holding the iron, and I thought, I don't want to put this down, it'll start a fire. And then I looked over 20 feet next to me and saw that the entire basement was engulfed in flame.
Terry and Diane Oughton were killed instantly. Only fragments of their bodies were ever found.
And I called out, and Kathy Boudin was there. She responded, and I went and I found her through the rubble, and we went out through the whole front of the house had collapsed. So we just went towards the daylight.
Kathy Boudin, the fourth member, was naked up in the shower, and another young man named Teddy Gold had just walked up from the basement when the first of the bombs went off.
And we didn't know that Teddy Gold was in the house. We had thought he had left to go buy something, and he must have just hesitated to tie his shoe or do something. So we just went towards the daylight.
Kathy Boudin, the fourth member, was naked up in the shower, and another young man named Teddy Gold had just walked up from the basement when the first of the bombs went off.
And we didn't know that Teddy Gold was in the house. We had thought he had left to go buy something, and he must have just hesitated to tie his shoe or do something. We didn't know that he was still in the house. We didn't find out till a couple of days later when they found his body.
And even as fire engines and police car sirens filled the air, they then ran and disappeared into the subway and went underground, and neither one of them was captured for years.
We had a very complicated set of ways of staying in touch with each other. Phone calls set up, one payphone to another payphone. And I found out about it by picking up a payphone at a designated time.
And at some level, the story of what happened in the Townhouse, is buried with the three people who, died there. And then Kathy Wilkerson and Kathy Boudin will say only a limited amount about, what was going on. So there's something, sort of absurd about that scenario. These guys in the basement plotting to commit what would be one of the most serious acts of terrorism in the entire history of the United States, while some woman upstairs is, changing the bed sheets. And I think it speaks to, the ideological confusion of the weathermen.
Is anyone else hearing a clicking sound coming through the video? Am I just making that up? Like, it's like a faint clicking sound. I'm about to murder my chihuahua, by the way. I'm literally about to murder my chihuahua. Okay, you don't think you heard it? All right, I'll let it play a little bit more.
Sort of had one foot in kind of the normal world and another foot in the world of being like a stone cold revolutionary, committing to doing things that would certainly change their lives forever, and at least in the short term, potentially alter the course of American history.
All right, it went away. Yeah, my dog is losing it, and I'm about to...
Do we need bomb factories and massive violent revolution to get rid of those on top of the food chain who are systematically destroying our planet? Martin Luther King is known as one of the founders of nonviolent revolution. Malcolm X fought against his ideals, saying that nonviolence will never work against violent governments. Is it true that only through violence we are able to create a new system? Do we really have to be ready to die for our cause?
If you can't find a path forward, if the normal pathways toward social change or political change, if those normal pathways are blocked, then people begin to say, well, what else can we do to stop this crime? And then you begin, say, the crime of slavery, or the crime of genocide in Vietnam, or the crime of continuing the afterlife of slavery, which continues to this day. How can we stop it?
An entire movement that had really been riding on a tide of violent rhetoric was kind of shocked by what had happened. People had actually died, kids like them. And I think the Townhouse, along with several other events that occurred in 1970, did more to prevent the spread of further political violence.
The FBI was absolutely terrified and determined to shut down the Weathermen. So the Weathermen needed to rapidly activate their plan to go underground. And then in the course of a very short amount of time,
we came out of that a single organization. We went into that quite a divided and splintered organization. We maintain the right to survive. We maintain the right to take the war to the war makers, and we will not harm or injure or kill people.
In the end, the Townhouse did that. It definitely caught everybody's attention and has become an iconic event, but only because it was us that died and not because the actual actions were successful. And that's the great irony of it all.
No longer would they build bombs in an effort to kill policemen or military officers. From that point, they needed, in Bernardine's words, to be more life-affirming.
And for the next 11 years, we survived on the run from the FBI. Bernardine, as you know, was put on the 10 most wanted list. And the only time that J. Edgar Hoover and I ever agreed is when he called her the most dangerous woman in America. I agree with that. Still, actually.
You know, we use the language of war all the time in those days, meaning Revolutionary War, and I have lots of conflicting feelings about that metaphor now. But at the time, for us, liberation wars meant freedom from empire, and that's what we thought we were doing internally.
I was underground for 10 years, and but the weather underground only lasted for 4.5 or 5 years more.
We changed our identities. We changed our appearances slightly. And we issued statements saying we weren't going to participate openly in the political world anymore. We were going to participate as people who were fugitives from the law. And that's what it meant to be underground.
With the underground and the mass movement responding together, we could shut down every international airport in America within 24 hours.
And so for the next 6-7 years, that's what Weathermen was. It was a group that lived and worked underground, that exploded bombs, but never again did Weathermen injure anyone seriously, much less kill anyone.
At 1 minute before 1 o'clock this morning, the switchboard at the Capitol received a phone call. A man's voice said a bomb would go off in the building in half an hour. At 1:30 in the morning, it did.
In the years 1970 to 1973, there were something like 20,000 bombings against U.S. military installations inside the United States. We took credit for 24. So we were obviously fish swimming in a sea, weren't we? Not just fish swimming in a sea of America, but we were even in a sea of people who were furious about the war and willing to take matters into their own hands. We were a small fish in that sea too.
Andrew, socialists hate Black people like Larry Elder and Kanye West and Jay-Z. Why do you think that is? They hate any. They're most of the businesses targeted in Minneapolis and the Black Lives Matter riots were Black-owned businesses. Why do you think that is? You don't win any points here by spewing bullshit, bro. This just isn't true. They love Black people who agree with them. They hate Black people who disagree with them. They love white people who agree with them. They hate white people who disagree with them. Most of the people at far left events are white. And no, they're not Jewish. They're actually just white. So, I'm sorry, bro. That's just wrong. And if you keep spewing that stuff in my chat, you're probably just not going to last here for very long, if I'm going to be honest about it. Because we hinge into reality here. No race-based bullshit. We can have conversations about, like, the Great Replacement. We can have pragmatic conversations about demographics. We can have conversations that hinge into reality. But what I am not going to do is to buy into this absurd notion that socialists hate white people when literally every socialist we've seen so far in this video is fucking white.
We did much more than we took credit for, but we didn't do 20,000. Wouldn't have been capable of anything like that. And we were very clear that we weren't trying to hurt anybody, weren't trying to terrorize or intimidate anybody. We were trying to issue a screaming reply to the fact that 6,000 people a week were being murdered by our government. 6,000 a week with no end in sight. So you think about the World Trade Center and you think about, 9/11, and there were several thousand people killed in an act of inhumane terrorism against a population, against civilians, against innocent people. And then you think about the genocide, the attempted genocide in Vietnam, 6,000 people every week.
But as the 70s wore on, their numbers began to dwindle. A group that began with probably 400 people at Flint, perhaps 125 went underground. By 1971, 1972, had all but been forgotten.
I was not interested in going to trial. I pled guilty, essentially to possession of explosives. I was sentenced for what they call in New York 0 to 3, meaning the parole board can decide when you get out after a year. There are still a couple dozen political prisoners from the Black Panther Party in prison in the United States who've been in prison for 40 years. They had life at the end of their sentence. They had like 20 to life or something. So the parole board can keep them till they die. And they are one by one dying in prison.
Ultimately, Weatherman went out with a whimper and no more bangs. But it's amazing, the last remnants of Weatherman, Bernardine Dohrn and Bill Ayers, didn't turn themselves in till the end of 1980.
Bernardine Dohrn, the former anti-war leader and student radical, surrendered today in Chicago.
Rebellion is inevitable and continuous. Resistance by every means necessary is happening and will continue to happen within the United States as well as around the world. And I remain committed to the struggle ahead.
This, I think, is one of the things that's happened during the course of this campaign, that there's a set of assertions made by Senator Clinton as well as her husband that are not factually accurate. I think that part of what the people are looking for right now is somebody who's going to solve problems and not resort to the same typical politics that we've seen in Washington.
Listen, again, guys, I don't want everyone to come down harshly on Andrew. Andrew is here. It's good that he's here and he's listening and he's learning. But what I would also say is that the concerns that they have, that America First has, is about, they have legitimate concerns surrounding race. What they do unsuccessfully is say the left hates all white people and they love all. That's not true. That's just not true. But that's not to say they don't have legitimate concerns. And if Andrew can come and be more nuanced in his approaches and actually take in the information that we have, then maybe we can reciprocate that. It's just a different culture. Andrew, we have a lot of people who come in here and they start trouble. And you aren't intending to do that. But like in the way that you guys are attacked all the time for your beliefs, like we get the same thing from different groups from the dissident right. And so my audience is punchy about that because we get attacked a lot from the dissident right. I know you're not doing that though, and I'm trying to explain that.
That is something that I hear all across the country.
This young man from Illinois was running for president, Barack Obama, and he was obviously very bright, very accomplished, very charismatic, very brilliant, smartest guy in any room he walked into. And so Hillary Clinton came up with this idea. And the way it burst into the public scene was that during a debate between Clinton and Obama, George Stephanopoulos, who was a close friend
all
of the
good,
Clintons,
Andrew. All
what
good.
about
Like
this? other friend of yours, Bill Ayers, he bombed the Pentagon and he's never said he was sorry. And what about that? And Obama said something like, he's a guy around the neighborhood. I don't share political discussions with him. I knew him, and he tried to brush it off.
And the notion that somehow, as a consequence of me knowing somebody who engaged in detestable acts 40 years ago when I was 8 years old.
Hang on. Rottweiler, please cut it out. Please stop. Andrew is here in good faith, continuing to bro, I appreciate you, bro, but continuing to harangue someone when they're here in good faith is just not the way to go about this. Okay? Just everyone chill. Everyone relax. We're watching a documentary. I don't want there to be trouble.
Somehow reflects on me and my values doesn't make much sense, George.
It happened that my graduate students were in my living room the night of the debate. We were having a seminar and we were just cleaning up and somebody put on the debate just at the point that came on. My students fell on the floor. They were completely stunned. And one of my students turned to me and said, "That guy has the same name as you." And somebody else said, "That's because it is him." And she couldn't believe it.
One of his earliest supporters is a man who, according to the New York Times, was a domestic terrorist and part of a group that, quote, launched a campaign of bombings that would target the Pentagon and the U.S. Capitol.
The fact is that while it was uncomfortable and while it was difficult in certain ways, the fact is it didn't really hurt me very much at all. I mean, it wasn't pleasant. It wasn't fun to be in the but if anyone was prepared for it in a funny way, I was, for a couple of reasons. One is because I was old enough to know that they couldn't define me for myself. I know who I am. I don't have to be loved by CBS News.
Barack Obama and domestic terrorist Bill Ayers, friends. They've worked together for years, but Obama tries to hide it. Why? We know Bill Ayers ran the violent left-wing activist group called Weather Underground. We know Ayers' wife was on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. But Obama's friendship with terrorist Ayers isn't the issue. The issue is Barack Obama's judgment and candor. Barack Obama, too risky for America.
Wow, John McCain.
I'm John McCain,
Holy shit.
and I approve this message.
We got a lot of death threats. We had a lot of, we got a call from our alderman at one point. She was worried about me because she'd gotten a lot of threats. And so they parked a cop car out in front of our house. The university had a cop assigned to me, and his name, ironically, was Officer Muhammad. And Officer Muhammad would check in on me every day and follow me home sometimes. And I had sent him 2 death threats that I'd gotten on my computer. One from a guy in Texas who said he was coming to Chicago with a posse to assassinate me, and they had my home address written down. And the other guy said he was coming, another guy from, I believe, Georgia, said that he and a group were coming to kidnap me and waterboard me. And Muhammad took a look at the 2 emails and he said, "Gee, Bill, I hope the guy who's going to shoot you gets here first, because it would be horrible to be waterboarded and then shot. Better to be shot and avoid the waterboarding." And I agreed.
If you have to ask me, I'll tell you what is wrong. There's no real freedom, that's something you should know. You mean nothing at all to the owners of the world. They manipulate you, they'll bring you to your knees. For your life is worthless and they'll do as they please. You mean nothing at all to the owners of the world. Tell me where are your rights? Tell me when will you realize that we live in a world with no love and no hope, where you mean nothing at all to the owners of the world. We mean nothing.
the most superficial thing in the world is celebrity and popularity, and equally ridiculous is unpopularity. So none of that matters. And I think that we live in a culture where celebrity has trumped accomplishment on 1,000 levels, and that's a mistake.
So the Weathermen
That's
had
true
convinced
enough.
themselves that revolution by means
True
of armed
enough.
struggle was desirable, necessary, and possible. But they had no real theory of how to gain state power. Okay, what it would mean to overthrow the United States. Do you occupy the Capitol? Do you annul the Constitution? Do you essentially burn to the ground American institutions only to, reinvent them? They had no practical social vision of what it would mean to succeed in their goal of revolution. So there was nothing formally religious about their vision, but they had a kind of moral zeal about them and belief that positive change could come through some kind of apocalyptic conflict with the powers that be.
Did we make mistakes? We made terrible mistakes. Am I devastated by all the people that were killed? Yes. But I feel like if I get up every day and I do the best I can, and I'm as principled as I can be, that's kind of how I look back at the past. I'm glad that I'm a passionate person. I'm glad that I took risks to act on my principles.
We have no regrets for our political history, broadly defined, in the sense that we chose sides, and we think the side we chose was right, historically right, and that we tried to act with a conscience and do minimal harm to human beings, or no harm to human beings. But I think that, of course, we have many regrets toward our comrades, toward people we treated harshly.
About the only concrete legacy I could identify of Weatherman was the security systems that we all live with now. Bomb detectors and bomb sniffing dogs, put at the Capitol, put at police stations, put at government buildings. That all started because of Weatherman. The tightening of dynamite purchase laws, that all started because of Weatherman. I think the nicest thing that you can say about them is in their fervency and their commitment, they have remained.
I mean, let's just be blunt here for a second. They are going to be on the right side of history because the left is going to win. The left is going to win, and they're going to win within probably the next 15 years. And when they win, they'll write the history books. In fact, they already are writing the history books. They're all like every single person, like they're college professors today. Bill Ayers is a college professor. So they will be on the right side of history. And it doesn't really matter what you think about that. They will be on the right side of history. They will win. And the fact that they will win and that they will be on the right side of history is an indictment against every single person who claims to oppose what they did and claims to oppose what they stand for, and yet does nothing to actually stop it. Does nothing to fight back against it.
Gained an inspiration to those like-minded people, many of them young, who are on the radical left today. Those you see in the Occupy Wall Street movement, I think, would be first among them. They can still draw inspiration from the incredible commitment of Weatherman without endorsing their actions, their political violence.
There's some evidence, not certain, but some, that in 1969, Richard Nixon, then president, was contemplating using nuclear weapons to end the war forever, and that he was deterred by mass mobilizations that were taking place here. Can't prove it, but it looks pretty much like that. And it continues. It's true that it didn't end the war, but it did have an impact. A couple of years later, when Ronald Reagan became president, his administration attempted to duplicate in Central America exactly what Kennedy had done in South Vietnam 20 years earlier. So they followed almost the same steps. White paper about how the communists are taking over the world and so on and so forth. There was such a backlash that they backed off.
After the election in November 2016, people were marching in the streets in every major city. But is the marching enough? We easily forget the past, not always realizing that we're seeing a repeat of what our parents and grandparents did in their time. For us, this feels very new, but it's not. It's a pattern and puts us on a leash.
We're at a point where we can either save the earth and end capitalism, or we can save capitalism and end the earth. And it seems to me
But I keep being assured by conservatives that the left absolutely never talks about capitalism and they never use the word capitalism. So why is he saying that our choice is to save the earth and end capitalism or keep capitalism and end earth? I'm gonna make a clip of that real quick. Hang on. Bear with me, please. I need to change my configuration on my audio. That's a real quick clip. Hang on, just waiting for the recording to start.
It's not. It's a pattern and puts us on a leash.
we're at a point where we can either save the earth and end capitalism, or we can save capitalism and end the earth. And it seems to me that's the stark choice. Now, what will the future look like? No one can predict. But there's no question that as a system that's based on predation, that's based on theft, that's based on constant expansion, that system will kill us all. And so we must find a way to fight for more peace, more participation, more transparency, more democracy, and more sustainability. If we can't find that path, we are doomed. And that's an urgent call for all of us.
Yeah. Mother Earth.
Radical means going to the root.
Well, what you just saw there is like, listen, when they were bombing places in the 60s, they wanted to end capitalism because they thought that they needed to end capitalism in order to end the war. Now that, I mean, it seems like it was 2016 when this was filmed, after the election, maybe a little bit after of Trump. Now they're saying it's all about Mother Earth. We need to save the earth, peace, love, and all that stuff, bro. So it's not about the issue. These people don't care about the issue. They don't care about being anti-war. They don't care about being pro-environment. The issue is always and forever anti-capitalism. And again, capitalism is defined specifically as private property ownership. It's not about crony capitalism. It's not about corrupt capitalism. It is literally just defined as private property ownership.
Radical means finding out what's underneath. So a typical liberal would say, this war is bad. A typical radical would say, why do we have war? So the classic kind of biblical type story is the villagers
The answer is capitalism, by the way.
Tending to the fields, and a river is running near the village, and somebody sees a baby floating in a basket, and they rush out to save the baby, and they bring the baby in, and they say, let's take care of the baby, and they feed the baby and find a place for it to live and so on. And 2 days later, they're working in the fields, and 4 babies come down in baskets, and they rush into the river, and they save the babies, and they give them food and find a place for them to stay. A week later, 20 babies come floating down the river, and they rush into the river. And somebody says, maybe we should go upriver and find out why the babies are coming into the river. And everybody says, no, it's a crisis. We have to save the babies. The radical is the one who says, Let's find out why the babies are coming in the river. And the liberal is the one who wants to save the baby. The radical wants to save the baby too, but the radical wants to stop the flow of babies. So that's how I use the word radical. I know in today's mass media, radical means something about religion and something about fundamentalism and something about making bombs. That's not the meaning of radical. Radical means going to the root of things.
The system created us. It was powered by the victories of World War II, and it was delivered to us as a desirable lifestyle through public relations, marketing, advertisements, music and film industry, the World Wide Web, Facebook, and Google. Our system made us consumers, keeping our eyes shut with lies while they tested atomic bombs and destroyed life in the Pacific, created wars over oil, and created terrorism to keep us fearful and under control. This system created drug wars, man-made viruses, pharmaceutical profiteering, Monsanto-based food industry, homeless, angry, and poor people throughout the world, from Midland America to South America to India. And it created President Donald Trump. The system that chooses profit over people has been destroying
Capitalism.
our planet over the past 100 years.
That's capitalism.
And we have let that happen. We were too busy watching Friends, Seinfeld, Sex and the City, and the Kardashians on TV, wasting our time with Hollywood movies, Netflix, and multiple news channels, that we didn't pay attention to what they were doing. They poison our minds with their financial propaganda, poison our intestines with profitable pesticides. And now they're planning to take away our water, the only thing that is still free other than air. If we continue keeping our eyes and minds closed, they will take our air as well, because they can. They made the system, so their crimes are legal.
The threat of war is, in fact, increasing. Nuclear war, that's recognized in pretty high places. Recently, William Perry, former defense secretary, one of the most respected analysts and students of nuclear affairs, warned that the threat of war now is greater than it was during the Cold War. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists every year since, I think, 1947 has what they call a doomsday clock, where they set the time a certain distance from midnight. Midnight means termination. We destroy ourselves. And they just moved it 2 minutes closer to midnight, so 3 minutes from midnight.
All right. Well, that's pretty much the end of the first documentary. That seems to be more about where they are now, which, I mean, I actually thought it was an interesting thing to watch. But I do hope the next documentary will be a little bit more. Now, okay, so here's the deal. Now, you guys knocked the super chat goal out of the park. So we're going to watch the second documentary. But here's the problem. I don't know if this is going to be a problem on YouTube for like copyright. Now, I'm willing to take the risk. I mean, even if I do get a strike, it actually won't be the end of the world. We're going to do commentary over it. It's going to be a fair use thing. Like, I think that that's pretty clear. It is freely available on Rumble, so it's like it is freely available content out there. But I just want everyone to know that if something happens on the YouTube stream as we're moving into this one, I do actually have a Rumble channel, and I am streaming on Rumble right now. And so here's the link in the chat. Make sure you're subscribed to my Rumble channel. If anything happens on the YouTube channel, we will continue on the Rumble channel, okay? I mean, is that good or bad? I don't know. Someone sent it to me. What does that mean, Brooks? You think this is good? Okay, Brooks is seal of approval. I need nothing else. Anyway, I think it'll probably be fine. I'm just letting people know that I am streaming on Rumble right now, and if anything happens, just go over to the Rumble stream, okay? Or stay watching on X like Milo is. Thank you, Milo. Appreciate it. All right, guys, and I do want to thank everyone for hitting the super chat goal, knocking the super chat goal out of the... Like, we're doing so much better. It was so much better for me to just yell at you guys and then stop the stream and then guilt trip you all into coming back and immediately mounting the like button for me. So if you have yet to mount the like button, now is a good time to do it. Also, feel free to keep the super chats coming if you feel so inclined. We're going to do another hour-long documentary. Like maybe we can get to $200 in super chats, another $70. Listen, man, like here's what I would really like, guys. Now, and I know that like some of you are supporting me monthly, some of you are supporting me annually, and I'm not saying that like you should like that is my number one way to support me that I appreciate is a subscription on the Substack, all right? But I'm just saying, if you can afford to and you feel so inclined, if you come to a stream that I do, throw in $5. 20 people throw in $5. It's like $100. And then I start actually making money streaming. And maybe I'll get better at streaming, and maybe I'll do a better job of streaming, and maybe I'll do that if people start showing up. And I'm not saying you guys don't show up ever, because you guys actually do show up quite a bit. But the Substack is definitely worth it. But listen, I'm just saying, if you can afford it, throw in $5 if you appreciate the several hours a day I spend streaming with you guys. That's all. That's all. All right, let's see. We are watching The Weathermen.
Sisters and brothers, a year ago we blew away the Haymarket Pig statue at the start of the youth riot in Chicago. The head of the Police Sergeants Association called emotionally for all-out war between the pigs and us. We accepted. Last night we destroyed the pig again. This time it begins a fall offensive of youth resistance that will spread from Santa Barbara to Boston, back to Kent and Kansas. Now we are everywhere, and next week families and tribes will attack the enemy around the country. We are not just attacking targets, we are bringing a pitiful, helpless giant to its knees. We invite Key and Nixon and Agnew to travel in this country. Come to the high schools and campuses. But guard your planes, guard your colleges, guard your banks, guard your children, guard your doors.
Bernadine Ray Dorn Ornstein, born January 12, 1942, is a former leader of the Weather Underground domestic terror group, responsible for bombings of the United States Capitol, the Pentagon, and several police stations in New York, as well as the Greenwich Village Townhouse explosion that killed 3 of its members. As a member of the Weather Underground, Dorn helped to create a declaration of a state of war against the United States government. And
what I will say for Bernadine, obviously she's a raging socialist, and I don't agree with her on that. But and obviously I don't agree with bombing people. I'm very much in favor of the non-aggression principle. I don't agree with that. Hey, thanks, Tate, and I do appreciate it. I will check that out. But can we just admit that like Bernadine's mugshot actually looks pretty badass? And I really do hope that I never have a mugshot. I don't think I'm going to need a mugshot. I don't leave my house. I don't do anything except stream socialism on the internet. Okay, there was that dalliance at the Capitol on January 6th, but I had my FBI interview and I didn't do nothing wrong. But if I ever do have a mugshot, I kind of want it to look as badass as Bernadine's. And I feel like people in my position, we sometimes need to think about these things. Because it is like, she looks like she looks like a badass. Yo, $25 super chat from 007. Thank you. I do appreciate it. Yeah, I was definitely not high at the Capitol on January 6th. That absolutely did not happen. I would never do that.
And was placed on the FBI's 10 most wanted list, where she remained for 3 years. From 1991 to 2013, she was a clinical associate professor of law at the Children and Family Justice Center at Northwestern University School of Law. She is married to Bill Ayers, a co-founder of the Weather Underground, who was formerly a tenured professor at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Dorn was a principal signatory on the Weather Underground's declaration of a state of war in May 1970 that formally declared war on the U.S. government and completed the group's transformation from political advocacy to violent action. She recorded the declaration and sent a transcript of a tape recording to the New York Times. Dorn also co-wrote with Bill Ayers and published the subversive manifesto Prairie Fire in 1974 and participated in the covertly filmed Underground in 1976. In late 1975, the Weather Underground put out an issue of a magazine, Also Watami, which carried an article by Dorn titled Our Class Struggle, described as a speech given to the organization's cadres on September.
We are building a communist organization to be part of the forces which build a revolutionary communist party to lead the working class to seize power and build socialism. We must further the study of Marxism-Leninism within the Weather Underground organization. The struggle for Marxism-Leninism is the most significant development in our recent history. We've discovered through our own experiences what revolutionaries all over the world have found, that Marxism-Leninism is the science of revolution, the revolutionary ideology of the working class. This is the same thing that's driving the left today. Everyone realizes this, right? Just because you don't see bombs going off yet, this is literally exactly the same ideology that is driving the far left today. Nothing has changed. This literally could be written by the revolutionary communists of America today, word for word, except for like the Weather Underground bit. Everyday Therapist, thank you for the super chat. This is to make up for the fact that I missed the first 86 minutes because YouTube didn't alert me. I do apologize to that, Everyday Therapist. Hey guys, as a reminder, I do have a Telegram channel that I'm sending out notifications to now. So if you want to get notified when I go live, and I probably should have done this a long ass time ago, but you know, better late than never, I suppose. But if you want to get a notification when I go live, then just get the Telegram app on your phone and join the channel. And I post when I post new content. I post when I go live. So YouTube notifications don't work. We all know that. And so I do appreciate the super chat, though, Everyday Therapist. Thank you for being a supporter.
For second of that year. In that article, Dorn clearly stated support for communist ideology. On August 22nd, 1969, Dorn was arrested in Chicago and charged with possession of drugs. The defense argued that Chicago police had conducted an illegal search of the car in which she was a passenger, which led Judge Kenneth R. Wendt of the Narcotics Court of Chicago to dismiss the charges. On September 20th, 1969, at an anti-Vietnam rally at the Davis Cup tennis tournament in Cleveland, police arrested Dorn and 20 other persons on charges of disorderly conduct. On September 26, 1969, Dorn was arrested again in Chicago during a rally in support of the 8 men accused of conspiracy concerning the riot during the 1968 Democratic National Convention, who were being tried on riot conspiracy charges. Dorn was next arrested on October 9th, 1969 by the Chicago police during a rally for the Women's Faction of the Weatherman Group and was later released on a $1,000 bond. On October 31st, 1969, a grand jury indicted 22 people, including Dorn, for their involvement with the trial of the Chicago 8, and she was again indicted on April 2nd, 1970, when a federal grand jury indicted 12 members of the Weatherman Group on conspiracy charges in violation of anti-riot acts during the Days of Rage. However, all of these convictions were reversed on November 21st, 1972 by the United States Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit on the basis the judge was biased in his refusal to permit defense attorneys to screen prospective jurors for cultural and racial bias. Due to the increasing volatility of the Weather Underground led by Dorn, on October 14, 1970, Bernardine Ray Dorn was added to the Federal Bureau of Investigation's 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list and was only removed in December 1973 after District Court Judge Damon Keith dismissed the case against the Weathermen. That dismissal was followed shortly by another when on January 3, 1974, Judge Julius Hoffman dismissed a 4-year-old case against 12 members of the Weatherman faction of the Students for a Democratic Society, including Dorn. She had been charged with leading the riotous Days of Rage. While on the run from police, Dorn used many aliases, including Bernardine Ray Ornstein, H.T. Smith, and Marion Delgado, and married another Weatherman leader, Bill Ayers, with whom she has 2 children. During the last years of their underground life, Dorn and Ayers resided in Chicago, where they used the aliases Christine Louise Douglas and Anthony J. Lee. In the late 1970s, the Weatherman group split into two factions, the May 19th Coalition and the Prairie Fire Collective, with Dorn and Ayers in the latter. The Prairie Fire Collective favored coming out of hiding, with
guys, just as an aside, as like a random note, one of the things that's really helpful to collect from the left are things like pamphlets and like leaflets and flyers, things you might see in the real world. This is especially true if you happen to live in like a lefty city. Like Chicago has all this stuff flying around right now. By the way, Chicago is going to have like massive amounts of demonstration around the DNC. There's going to be a lot of far leftist groups there. If you live in or around Chicago, please like be careful and don't fuck around. And I'm being serious about that. There's going to be massive protests in Chicago. And so, like, I guess my ask is that if you guys see this stuff out, like in the real world, or you happen to see it online or anything like that, again, like flyers or pamphlets or like anything that's like, that looks kind of like handmade and hand done, please take a picture of it and send it to me in some way. You can DM me on Twitter. I'll give you an email address you can send it to, like, because I want to collect this stuff, because it's honestly some of the most, like, this is how they communicate with each other. And so it's the most valuable stuff to kind of collect and organize. And it's not always something that gets put online. And so, like, if we can all just, you know, just, it doesn't have to be a big deal. Just like snap a photo of it, or even like take a physical copy if you can, something like that, get it over to me. That would be really great. I would appreciate it.
members facing the criminal charges against them, while the May 19th coalition remained in hiding. A decisive factor in Dorn's coming out of hiding were her concerns about her children. The couple turned themselves in to authorities in 1980, while some charges relating to their activities with the Weathermen were dropped due to prosecutorial misconduct. Dorn pleaded guilty to charges of aggravated battery and bail jumping, for which she was put on probation. After refusing to testify against ex-Weatherman Susan Rosenberg in an armed robbery case, she served just less than a year in prison. Shortly after turning themselves in, Dorn and Ayers became legal guardians of Chesa Boudin, the son of former members of the Weather Underground, Kathy Boudin and David Gilbert, after the couple were convicted of murder for their roles in a 1981 armed car robbery. From 1984 to 1988, Dorn was employed by the Chicago law firm Sidley Austin, where she was hired by Howard Trenans, the head of the firm who knew Thomas G. Ayers, Dorn's father-in-law. "We often hire friends," Trenan told a reporter for the Chicago Tribune. However, Dorn had not been admitted to the New York or Illinois bar, even though she had passed both bar exams, because she had not submitted an application to the New York Supreme Court's Committee on Character and Fitness. Similarly, she was turned down by the Illinois Ethics Committee because of her criminal record. Trenan said of the Illinois rejection, "Dorn didn't get a law license because she's stubborn. She wouldn't say she's sorry." In 1994, Dorn said of her political beliefs, "I still see myself as a radical." On November 4th, 2010, Dorn was interviewed by NewsClick India about the right in the U.S. She said, "It's racist, it's armed, it's hostile, it's unspeakable," referring to the Restoring Honor rally, which was promoted by Glenn Beck and held on August 28, 2010 at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. "You have white people armed, demanding the end to the Obama presidency." She also stated, "The real terrorist is the American government, state terrorism unleashed against the world." In 2008, Dorn and Ayers resurfaced into news headlines as presidential candidate John McCain and his running mate Sarah Palin publicly denounced the ties between Ayers and then presidential candidate Barack Obama. Thomas G. Ayers, father of William Ayers, was born on February 16, 1915 in Detroit, Michigan. From 1964 to 1980, he served as president, CEO, and chairman of Commonwealth Edison, otherwise known as ComEd, the largest electric utility in Illinois. Ayers served as chairman of the Board of Trustees of Northwestern University, the Erickson Institute, the Bank Street College of Education in New York City, the Chicago Symphony, the Chicago Community Trust, the Chicago Urban League, the Community Renewal Society, the Chicago Association of Commerce and Industry, Chicago United, the Leadership Council for Metropolitan Open Communities, and Dearborn Park Corporation, and served as vice president of the Chicago Board of Education. Ayers also served on the board of directors of Sears, G.D. Searle, Chicago Pacific Corp., Zenith Corp., Northwest Industries, General Dynamics Corp. of St. Louis, First National Bank of Chicago, the Chicago Cubs, and the Tribune Company. Other notable names on the board of directors of the First National Bank of Chicago were A. Robert Abood, John E. Drick, and Gaylord Freeman. Freeman and Drick were not only members, but Grand Masters of the Priory of Sion, which presides over the learned elders of Sion of the 33rd degree. Ayers also helped negotiate the first labor contract between Con Ed and the 12,000-member International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. Ayers was well aware that the real power in Chicago came from championing the plight of the black community. When Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. brought his open house campaign to Chicago in the mid-1960s, Thomas Ayers was called upon to negotiate between Mayor Richard J. Daley's administration and the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. He also developed the Leadership Council for Metropolitan Open Communities to fight racial discrimination in housing. Ayers, as well as his son Bill Ayers, also helped fund a young Barack Obama by way of the Chicago Annenberg Challenge, or CAC, of which Barack Obama was head of the board from 1995 to 1999. The CAC was originally set up to benefit local Chicago schools, as well as the Alliance for Better Chicago Schools, or ABCs. Active in the ABCs was Bill Ayers, Barack Obama's Developing Communities Project, and Chicago United, a group of businessmen concerned about race and education issues founded by Bill Ayers' father, Tom Ayers, CEO of Con Ed, now known as Exelon. By 1999, the CAC had raised $160 million that was supposed to be dispersed in the Chicago Schools Project amongst the Chicago Annenberg Challenge Board, the Chicago School Reform Collaborative, and the Consortium of Chicago Schools Research. Barack Obama was the first chairman of the CAC board and stepped down in 1999, but remained on the board until CAC phased itself out of existence and handed off its remaining assets to the Chicago Public Education Fund in 2001. The co-chair of the CAC's collaborative from 1995 to 2000 was Bill Ayers. And although there seems to be many clear connections between Barack Obama and the Ayers family, Obama downplayed this relationship.
I'll respond to these two particular allegations that Senator McCain's made that have gotten a lot of attention. In fact, Mr. Ayers has become the centerpiece of Senator McCain's campaign over the last 2 or 3 weeks. This has been their primary focus. So let's get the record straight. Bill Ayers is a professor of education in Chicago. 40 years ago, when I was 8 years old, he engaged in despicable acts with a radical domestic group. I have roundly condemned those acts. 10 years ago, he served and I served on a school reform board that was funded by one of Ronald Reagan's former ambassadors and close friends, Mr. Annenberg. Other members on that board were the presidents of the University of Illinois, the president of Northwestern University, who happens to be a Republican, the president of the Chicago Tribune, a Republican-leaning newspaper.
Why are you guys so excited about this? This is just a video someone sent me. I have no idea who this guy is. Why is this so exciting? Someone explain. I don't watch other people on the internet. You guys know this. I don't know other content creators on the internet. Why is this exciting to you? Am I walking into a trap? Here's what I really want to know. Am I walking into a trap of some sort? Because I don't know other content creators on the internet? Someone explain yourselves. That's like 3 people who have said this. It's like you guys all have some little secret and we don't know what it is. But we know you have a secret and you're not telling us. Okay, it's like is a conspiracy theory thing? Okay. I don't mind that. Oh, he's a Q guy? Oh no. Oh no. All right, well, we're going to keep going. We'll watch it.
Mr. Ayers is not involved in my campaign. He has never been involved in this campaign, and he will not advise me in the White House. So that's Mr. Ayers. Now,
yet according to the CAC archives, that seems to be anything but true. In September of 2008, The Hill reported that Barack Obama was not only working with the Ayers by way of the CAC as working partners, but Obama had even kicked off his fundraiser and campaign in 1995 at the home of Bill Ayers and his wife, Bernadine Dorn, co-founders of the Weathermen. In 2012, Jerome Corsi interviewed a witness named Alan Halton, who was the mailman to the family of Tom and Mary Ayers, father of Bill Ayers. In this interview, he recounts some of his conversations with the Ayers family and their mention of a young foreign student.
Was there any one address in particular that we're going to talk about that you delivered mail to? And who resided there?
That was Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Ayers.
And who are they?
Thomas Ayers was formerly president of Commonwealth Edison. He has a son that's been in the news whose name is Bill Ayers. I had a conversation with him not too long after they first moved in to their home. And basically it opened up, he asked me about my job and how I liked my job and things in particular about my employment situation. And then he started in on what I refer to as a Marxist type of viewpoint.
Can you recall the conversation in the early 1990s with Mary?
Yeah, one day she came to the door when I came up to the house with the mail. And after a greeting, she started enthusiastically talking to me about this young black student that they were helping out. And she referred to him as a foreign student.
Did you ever meet this young student?
They're saying that Barack Obama was an exchange student. This is not what I was expecting. I literally just wanted to learn about what they did in the 70s. All right. No, I do not believe that Barack Obama was an exchange student that lived at Bill Ayers' house. I'm sorry. No, that's too far. But, like, you know what? We're committed already. We're 15 minutes in, so we're going to keep going. But no. Wrong. Pushback. Disavow YouTube. I don't agree with any of this.
Well, I don't know if it's some months or even a year later.
Like, you're telling me the evidence is the mailman saw something funny that the mailman didn't like? Like, no offense to mailmen, but, like, my mail lady's an evil bitch. She doesn't know anything about me. Like, why would I believe the mailman? Makes no sense.
There was a young man, black man, walking down the street just after I had delivered the mail to the Ayers home. And he greeted me. And he was very polite. He was nicely dressed, informally dressed. And immediately he entered into conversation with me and told me that he had taken the train out from Chicago. And he had come to thank the Ayers family personally for helping him with his education. I asked him, I said, well, now that you're out of school, what are your plans? What are you going to do? And he said, and he looked right at me, he says, I'm going to be president of the United States.
Oh,
are you certain that this was the young black man?
Barack Obama revealed his plans for world domination to the mailman at Bill Ayers' parents' house.
Mail you saw in front of the Ayers home.
I am absolutely positive that it was Barack. What I distinctly remember her saying in her description of him, that was in the sentence that he was a foreign student.
Yet there was still one more connection between Ayers, Obama, and Dorn, the law firm of Sidley Austin.
Just for the record, I feel like we've now we've like Now we watched a documentary that I think actually had some good information, and this documentary might prove to have some good information, but now we're sliding down into the rabbit hole of like just fun time on the internet. Like this is just fun. This is a conspiracy theory movie. I didn't realize that when it was recommended to me on Twitter. I thought it was serious. Yeah, this is like when we watched that other like 4-hour conspiracy documentary that Big Tech told me to watch. And then after we watched the 4-hour conspiracy theory documentary in which it was revealed that Prince William was the Antichrist, I DM'd Big Tech. I was like, what the fuck did you just make me watch? And he's like, oh, I gave you the wrong link.
Sidley Austin LLP, formerly known as Sidley Austin Brown and Wood LLP, is a general practice law firm based in the United States with a focus on expertise in transactional and litigation matters. The current firm was formed as a result of the 2001 merger of two predecessors, the Chicago-based Sidley and Austin, founded in 1866, and the New York-based Brown and Wood, founded in 1914. Some of Sidley Austin's high-profile clients include Mary Todd Lincoln, then the widow of President Abraham Lincoln, the Pullman Company, and Western Union. By the 1970s and 80s, Sidley and Austin had merged with more than 50 lawyers of Chicago, and by 2001, the firm merged with Brown and Wood, who had offices in the World Trade Center. Sidley Austin is currently the 6th largest U.S.-based corporate law firm with approximately 2,000 lawyers and annual revenues of more than $2 billion. Prior to the merger creating Sidley Austin, Brown, and Wood, which took place just 4 months before the September 11, 2001 terror attacks, the head office of Brown and Wood was in the World Trade Center, while Sidley and Austin New York office was located in offices on 3rd Avenue. Out of 600 employees who worked in the World Trade Center at the time of the attacks, one perished, a switchboard operator named Rosemary Smith. The current offices are located at the AXA Equitable Center at 787 7th Avenue between 51st and 52nd Streets in Manhattan, New York City. Sidley Austin LLP's alumni is as extensive and influential as their high-profile clientele, featuring such high-profile names as Cameron F. Carey, the brother of then Secretary of State John Kerry, former General Counsel of the Federal Trade Commission Bill Blumenthal, Ken Glazer, former Deputy Attorney General under Eric Holder Jr. James Cole, as well as Michelle and Barack Obama. It was men like Thomas Ayers and Gaylord Freeman who helped facilitate Barack Obama's move to the prestigious law firm of Sidley and Austin, where he met Michelle Robinson, who was interning at the firm and being mentored by Bernadine Dorn. At the time, the law firm was counsel to Commonwealth Edison Company, whose president and chairman was Thomas G.
So now they're saying that in addition to Barack Obama growing up as a foreign exchange student in the same house with Bill Ayers, Michelle Obama was mentored by Bill Ayers' wife. This is great.
Ayers. John Ayers, brother of Bill Ayers, had worked with Michelle Obama in the Community Renewal Society, a civil rights organization and project funder for the United Church of Christ, featuring the Reverend Jeremiah Wright. Working alongside Ayers and Obama was Susan Klonsky from the Communist Front, Students for a Democratic Society, whose chairman was her husband, Mike Klonsky. But it's Sidley Austin's prominent role in so many high-profile cases that have earned them their status, for better or worse.
I've never seen a stamp like that. I've never used a stamp like that. Haven't you seen stamps like that in every single one of the documents that you've been shown during this deposition? Can you get me all the exhibits? Just a waste. It is a waste of time.
In 2001, Sidley Austin represented the Microsoft Corporation in their antitrust law case versus the U.S. government. The government accused Microsoft of illegally maintaining its monopoly position in the PC market, primarily through the legal and technical restrictions it put on the abilities of PC manufacturers and users to uninstall Internet Explorers and use other programs such as Netscape and Java. In 2015, Sidney Blumenthal, friend and advisor to Bill and Hillary Clinton, testified before the House committee investigating the 2012 Benghazi terrorist attack. Representative Trey Gowdy of South Carolina claimed there was a financial stake for Blumenthal in Libya as he pressed for Clinton to intervene. Blumenthal was represented by James Cole, former Deputy Attorney General under Eric Holder, and lawyer with Sidley Austin. Eric Holder had long been rumored to be involved with the Black Panther Party, a group that emerged in the late 60s along with the Weathermen. Eric Holder was also instrumental in the Clinton administration's 176 pardons in January 2001. As David Horowitz explains, the beneficiaries of those pardons included such notables as former Weather Underground members Susan Rosenberg, who was involved in the deadly 1981 armed robbery of a Brinks armored car, and Linda Evans, who had used false identification to buy firearms, harbored a fugitive, and was in possession of 740 pounds of dynamite at the time of her arrest in 1985. In 2015, Sidley Austin once again came under fire under allegations that they had failed to reveal false testimony involving Mitsubishi Electronics in their trade secret trial versus Grail Semiconductor. In 2018, the U.S. government attempted to put pressure on U.S. and foreign telecom and internet providers to stop using Chinese tech giant Huawei's telecom equipment. In particular, a Chinese company called Hikvision, which specializes in surveillance cameras. Sidley Austin was brought in to lobby against the ban on Hikvision, which sells much of its product on Amazon, who has seemed to, over the years, employ some of the same legal team as Sidley Austin. In May of 2019, federal prosecutors moved to disqualify the former Deputy Attorney General who was defending the Chinese telecommunications giant Huawei. That man is James M. Cole of Sidley Austin LLP. The New York Times reports that the government contends
All
that
right, I want to
Huawei
know about
and
the
Ms.
Weatherman,
Meng
though.
Wanzhou, Huawei's chief financial officer and the daughter of its founder, conspired to mislead HSBC and other banks about Huawei's relationship with a company called Skycom in order to circumvent United States sanctions against doing business in Iran. These are just some of many questionable cases in which Sidley Austin LLP has been involved in, often with their own legal team being involved with violations themselves. But perhaps none of these are as alarming as their connection with one long-term client, Europe's aircraft maker, Airbus.
Oh, here we go. What does this have to do with the Weather Underground?
Since the early 1990s, there's been fierce competition between two airline and aerospace juggernauts, Airbus and Boeing, with Airbus largely becoming a European consortium and Boeing its American rival, having absorbed McDonnell Douglas in 1997. One particular rivalry is over the model's Airbus A320 versus the Boeing 737. Boeing, as well as their 737 MAX jets, were dealt a huge blow in early 2019 when President Donald Trump announced an emergency order from the Federal Aviation Administration grounding Boeing.
Listen, I just want to say, again, this was the result of a recommendation, and multiple people in the chat have said this is good. And so I have to believe that if we just hunker down and stick with it, it's going to go back to the topic, because I really this is like when leftists get into word salad and they go on a tangent and they say they spend about 15 minutes saying things that don't mean anything, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, they're right back on topic. So I guess hunker down, go get some alcohol if you feel like you need that, and we're hunkering down, we're getting through it.
737 MAX jets. This came in the wake of the crash of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, which killed 157 people on board, as well as the 737 MAX 8 operated by Lion Air, an Indonesian carrier, which crashed and killed 189 people. Both flights had reported flight control problems to air traffic controllers just minutes before their planes crashed. The report was the 737 MAX, which had been outfitted with larger engines that could cause its nose to pitch skyward. Boeing added an MCAS, or Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, which is intended to activate and push the nose down when necessary. But because of a faulty sensor, the Lion Air Flight MCAS caused the plane to go into a steep dive. Numerous pilots had complained of the same issue before, and Boeing has since announced that it will release a software upgrade for the 737 MAX, having claimed previously to the FAA that the software was interchangeable with earlier models of the 737, and therefore pilots who were already trained in flying older 737s would not need additional training. Much of the controversy between Boeing and Airbus has to do with subsidies, with Airbus claiming that Boeing receives illegal subsidies through the military, yet at the same time Airbus's parent company, EADS, itself is a military contractor. In 2005, the United States filed a case against the European Union for providing allegedly illegal subsidies to Airbus. 24 hours later, the European Union responded with a complaint against the United States and their support for Boeing. In 2010, the World Trade Organization ruled that European governments unfairly financed Airbus. They also contended that Boeing must repay $5.3 billion of illegal subsidies received from the defense budget and NASA research grants. In March of 2012, the WTO released their findings confirming the illegality of subsidies to Boeing while also confirming the legality of repayable loans made to Airbus. This has since led to a series of suits and countersuits between Boeing and Airbus. This result was achieved thanks in part to Todd Friedbacher, a lawyer and partner who spearheaded the efforts from the Geneva office of Sidley Austin LLP. In 2017, the British Ministry of Defence announced that it intended to award Airbus Defence and Space the single-source contract for the manufacturing, assembly, integration, testing, and launching of a Skynet 6A geostationary military communications satellite. This came along with some criticism as the MOD had previously stated it was not considering extending the Airbus deal. Airbus parent company EADS and their Astrium subsidiary company Paradigm has given support to British military satellite communications since around 2003. Signal Unit number 1001 was stationed at Royal Air Force Station Oakhanger near Borden, East Hampshire in England. The station has since been decommissioned, closed, and handed over to Paradigm. Paradigm Secure Communications is now known as Airbus Defence and Space. The three sites are now designated TCS Oakhanger, Satellite Ground Station Oakhanger, and Satellite Ground Terminal F4, operated on behalf of NATO. The sites are now used to support the Skynet 5 constellation and the United States Air Force Satellite Control Network. This move was considered highly unusual given that the MOD had previously stated they no longer wanted to use PFIs or privately funded initiatives. This was considered a curious move in a curious location from a curious company, being heavily represented by a curious law firm with a curious alumni, with curious ideals and origins.
About time. We're back on topic.
There's no way to be committed to nonviolence in the middle of the most violent society that history's ever created. I'm not committed to non.
There's no way to be committed to nonviolence in the most violent society that history has ever created. Do socialists currently think that we live in the most violent society that history has ever created? Like today? Not Bernadine, today. Would socialists agree with the statement that she just made? What do you think? Listen to it again.
There's no way to be committed to nonviolence in the middle of the most violent society that history's ever created.
There's no way to be committed to nonviolence in the most violent society that history has ever created. If you think that's not on some anarchist publication somewhere, I promise you it is. I promise you we're going to come across some anarcho-communist publication, a zine, a communique, a manifesto, something that's going to have that exact quote in it. And it wouldn't have been written, 50 years ago? It would be written maybe 15 years ago and be hugely influential in the lives of the current leftist activists today. Well, they will always see, as long as capitalism exists, capitalism as in private property ownership, as long as capitalism exists, they will always believe that we live in the most violent society because they believe that violence is intrinsic to capitalism. Capitalism is the root of all evil, violence included. Yep.
I'm not committed to nonviolence in any way.
I'm a teacher now in a community college, and my students will occasionally bring up the war in Vietnam and ask me what my involvement was. And I'll say, well, I helped found an organization whose goal was the violent overthrow of the government of the United States.
I'm not going to tell you, oh, I walked in here this day and put a bomb here, or I made this here, or I blew up this car, or I held up this bank. I mean, there were armed robberies. They were all armed robberies, terrorism. You know, there was all kinds of things that went down that were illegal. So I tell you that we did them, but I'm not going to tell you which ones I did or who did what, because you just can't do that.
The origins of the Weathermen can be traced to the collapse and fragmentation of the Students for a Democratic Society, following a split between office holders of SDS, or National Office, and their supporters, and the Progressive Labor Party. During the factional struggle, national office leaders such as Bernardine Dohrn and Mike Klonsky began announcing their emerging perspectives, and Klonsky published a document titled Toward a Revolutionary Youth Movement. Klonsky's document reflected the philosophy of the National Office and was eventually adopted as an official.
Inherent to Marxism is the abolition of the capitalist state. That's why they believe they're anarchists. The most radical far left activists are anarchists. They believe when they abolish capitalism, they will be abolishing the state. That's why.
SDS doctrine. During the summer of 1969, the National Office began to split. A group led by Klonsky became known as RYM2, and the other side, RYM1, was led by Dohrn and endorsed more aggressive tactics such as direct action, as some members felt that years of nonviolent resistance had done little or nothing to stop the Vietnam War. The Weathermen strongly sympathized with the radical Black Panther Party. The police killing of Panther Fred Hampton prompted the Weathermen to issue a declaration of war upon the United States government. After the Days of Rage riots, the Weathermen held the last of its National Council meetings from December 26 to December 31st, 1969 in Flint, Michigan. The meeting, dubbed the War Council by the 300 people who attended, adopted John Jacobs' call for violent revolution. Dohrn opened the conference by telling the delegates they needed to stop being afraid and begin the armed struggle. Over the next 5 days, the participants met in informal groups to discuss what's going underground meant, how best to organize collectives, and justifications for violence. In the evening, the groups reconvened for a mass wargasm, practicing karate, engaging in physical exercise, singing songs, and listening to speeches. The thesis of Weatherman theory, as expounded in its founding document, "You don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows," was that the main struggle going on in the world today is between U.S. imperialism and the national liberation struggles against it, based on Lenin's theory of imperialism, first expounded in 1916 in Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism.
Oh, wait,
In Weatherman theory,
what? The highest stage of capitalism? So we're not really talking about imperialism as much as we're talking about capitalism, right? They just use different words because then people are confused.
oppressed peoples are the creators of the wealth of empire, and it is to them that it belongs. The goal of revolutionary struggle must be the control and use of this wealth in the interest of the oppressed peoples of the world. The goal is the destruction of U.S. imperialism and the achievement of a classless world communism. The Weathermen were outspoken critics of the concepts that later came to be known as white privilege and identity politics. As the civil disorder in poor black neighborhoods.
Pop quiz for the chat. Why does whiteness mean capitalism? Is this about white people or is this about capitalism? If you want to create a communist world, you don't get rid of white people. White people love communism. Most socialists are communists. Or excuse me, most socialists are white people. So if you want to create like a communist world, like getting rid of white people is actually really stupid, right? Because most socialists are white. When they say race course against white supremacy, they mean capitalism. Why does whiteness mean capitalism? Why does whiteness mean capitalism? Thank you, NanoPie. Capitalism is private. Capitalism is about private property ownership. Slavery is a form of private property ownership. Slavery then created systemic racism, which is racial disparities that are across the system. The system that upholds racism in systemic racism is capitalism. If they're saying institutional racism, the institution that upholds racism is capitalism. If we just get rid of capitalism, we will get rid of racism. That's what they believe. It's about capitalism because whiteness means beneficiary of capitalism, creating inequity. Yup, every time you hear the term white privilege means capitalist privilege. It means the private property owner, the people who can own a home, who can own land, who can have a business, things like that. Because all those things creates an inequitable distribution of resources. It's about capitalism because people were owned as slaves, so they used white because it was white landlords that owned slaves. Yep. Because race was created when slaves were brought to America as private property. Yep, exactly. Private property is inequity.
It's intensified in the early 1970s. Bernadine Dorn said, white youth must choose sides now. They must either fight on the side of the oppressed or be on the side of the oppressor. Shortly after its formation as an independent group, Weatherman created a central committee, the Weather Bureau, which assigned its cadres to a series of collectives in major cities. These cities included New York, Boston, Seattle, Philadelphia, Cincinnati, Buffalo, and Chicago, the home of the SDS head office. The collective set up under the Weather Bureau drew their design from Che Guevara focal theory, which focused on the building of small, semi-autonomous cells guided by central leadership. In April 1971, the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI broke into an FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania. The group stole files with several hundred pages. The files detailed the targeting of civil rights leaders, labor rights organizations, and left-wing groups in general, and included documentation of acts of intimidation and disinformation by the FBI and attempts to erode public support for those popular movements. By the end of April, the FBI offices were to terminate all files dealing with leftist groups. The files were part of an FBI program called COINTELPRO. After COINTELPRO was dissolved in 1971 by J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI continued its counterintelligence on groups like the Weather Underground. In 1973, the FBI established the Special Target Information Development Program, where agents were sent undercover to penetrate the Weather Underground. Due to the illegal tactics of FBI agents involved with the program, government attorneys requested all weapons and bomb-related charges be dropped against the Weather Underground. The most well-publicized of these tactics were the black bag jobs, referring to searches conducted in the homes of relatives and acquaintances of the weathermen. The Weather Underground was no longer a fugitive organization and could turn themselves in with minimal charges against them. Additionally, the illegal domestic spying conducted by the CIA in collaboration with the FBI also lessened the legal repercussions for weathermen turning themselves in. One of those agents was Larry David Grathwohl. His exploits were documented in the 1976 book, Bringing Down America, in which he exposed the inner workings of the Weather Underground and the personal activities of many of its members, including Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn.
I brought up the subject of what's going to happen after we take over the government. We become responsible then for administrating, 250 million people. And there was no answers. No one had given any thought to economics. How are you going to clothe and feed these people? The only thing that I could get was that they expected that the Cubans and the North Vietnamese and the Chinese and the Russians would all want to occupy different portions of the United States. They also believed that their immediate responsibility would be to protect against what they called the counter-revolution. And they felt that this counter-revolution could best be guarded against by creating and establishing re-education centers in the Southwest.
Oh, really?
Where we would take all the people who needed to be re-educated into the new way of thinking and teach them how things were going to be. I ask, well, what is going to happen to those people that we can't re-educate, that are die-hard capitalists? And the reply was that they'd have to be eliminated. And when I pursued this further, they estimated that they would have to eliminate 25 million people in these re-education centers. And when I say eliminate, I mean kill. 25 million people. I want you to imagine sitting in a room with 25 people, most of which have graduate degrees from Columbia and other well-known educational centers, and hear them figuring out the logistics for the elimination of 25 million people. And they were dead serious.
From 1969 throughout the 1970s, the left
I've like fully accepted that there will probably be a day. And again, I think the Marxists are going to win. I think they're going to win. I think they're going to overthrow the government. I think I don't think we're going to see a lot of violence, like skirmishes here and there. But I think once the revolution is basically already assured, like then there's going to be like a short, violent overthrow of the government. I don't think it's going to last very long. And I think they're going to win. And I think it's going to happen within my lifetime. And listen, I'm not as young as some, but I'm not as old as some either. And I really kind of like, and this is the God's honest truth, I've kind of like accepted the fact that someday probably I'm going to be sent to a gulag somewhere, or like I'm just going to be like taken out back and shot, or like any of these things. And it's just like, it's like I've like accepted it. I've come to peace with it. It's an odd feeling when you acknowledge that like there's not it's not a zero chance that could happen. In fact, if that were to happen in America, it would probably be a pretty likely chance that I would be on a list somewhere because I was stupid and wasn't anonymous on the internet, and that is truly and sincerely one of the greatest mistakes of my life, was not being anonymous on the internet. I would take it back if I could, but here we are. You don't get a do-over. Yep, we'll probably be together in the re-education camp bot. Yep, probably so.
wing terrorist organization, the Weathermen, carried out a series of bombings, jailbreaks, and riots. October 6, 1969, the Haymarket Police statue in Chicago was bombed. October 8 through 11, 1969, the Days of Rage riots occur in Chicago. November 8, 1969, 2 shots fired at a Cambridge police station. 2 Weathermen, James Kilpatrick and James Reeve, were indicted and subsequently released when a witness recanted his testimony. December 6, 1969, several Chicago police cars were bombed in Chicago. The Weather Underground claimed responsibility as a response to the fatal police shooting of Illinois Black Panther Party leaders Fred Hampton and Mark Clark. February 16, 1970, a bomb was detonated at the Golden Gate Park branch of the San Francisco Police Department, killing 1 officer and injuring a number of other policemen. March 6, 1970, Weather Underground members Theodore Gold, Diana Oughton, and Terry Robbins are killed in the Greenwich Village Townhouse explosion when a nail bomb they were constructing detonates. The bomb was intended to be planted at a non-commissioned officer's dance at Fort Dix, New Jersey. March 1st, 1971, the Weather Underground bombs the U.S. Capitol in protest to the invasion of Laos. May 19, 1972, the Weather Underground bombs the Pentagon in retaliation for the U.S. bombing raid in Hanoi. The date was chosen for its being Ho Chi Minh's birthday. Once again in 1975 on
Seriously? Chrissy's a good person to tell us if this is all just conspiracy theory then. My uncle's wife was in the Weather Underground. She served time, still a lefty. Yeah, they're all still lefties. Like, none of them changed. This is why, by the way, it's so effing stupid for the right to think that just debunking everything the left says is going to change. Like, if we can just debunk them, they will see the error of their ways. And it's like, you have these, like, the radical lefties. They literally build bombs, blow shit up, go on the run, assume fake identities for years and years and years, eventually get arrested, go to prison, come out, and they're still like, no, I'm not sorry. Nope, don't recant a thing. And it's like, it's like so absurd to think that like all we need to do is debunk them and they're going to see that communism is wrong. It's like, do you have any sense of perspective here? This is their identity. This is who they are. If they don't have this, they have nothing.
January 29th, the State Department was bombed. Weather Underground stated that this was in response to escalation in Vietnam. These are just a few of a litany of violent attacks carried out by the Weather Underground, which by 1977 had all but disbanded. Those who had not been killed or arrested retreated into other walks of life, including politics, law, and academia.
They are the cultural centerpiece that they are the salon. Think Arianna Huffington in Los Angeles with her Hollywood lefty friends. They are the center point of the Chicago social and political scene.
Holy
and my
shit.
conviction that
Guys, breaking news. Breaking news. Nick Fuentes just went live on time for the second day in a row. I literally just saw him go live right now. That's 2 days in a row that Nick Fuentes has started his show on time, not waiting until 2 a.m. Listen, our boy is growing up. He's got a new studio. He's still wearing his dad's ties, but we're working on that. Haircut's looking good. He's getting all professional. And now, even on top of everything, Nick Fuentes is showing up on time. We're going to still stay and watch this, but I just, Nick Fuentes has put on his big boy pants. He's growing. Our boy is growing up. He's taking it seriously. He spent a lot of money on the new studio, and he's like, I'm going to get my money's worth out of this new studio. Yep, we're very proud of him. Very proud. Starting his show 8 p.m. Central Time on the dot.
they are helped to create and manufacture Barack Obama, the politician, is absolute. It was just hanging out, and I could just tell beyond the book thing, Dreams of My Father, beyond the fact that they launched his career from his house, and they are intimately involved in the movement. Unrepentant terrorist loves Occupy and goes down and gives them pep talks. I think that's significant.
Although the Weather Underground has not been considered officially active for decades, the influence of Dorn, Ayers, the Ayers family, as well as the alumni of the Weather Underground.
Yeah, exactly. This is exactly. Mm-hmm. When Nick heard that being on time was white patriarchy, he said, "Hold my beer."
Still remain. From 1991 to 2013, Bernadine Dorn was a clinical associate professor of law at the Children and Family Justice Center at Northwest University School of Law, even though she's not a lawyer. Dorn currently serves on the board of numerous human rights committees and has served as visiting law faculty at the VU University in Amsterdam, that currently boasts a high rate of student internships in companies like Google. Bill Ayers is a retired professor in the College of Education at the University of Illinois at Chicago, formerly holding the titles of Distinguished Professor of Education and Senior University Scholar. They have 2 adult children, one being Zaid Dorn, a playwright, who in 2010 wrote a short play entitled "'Cause I Know You Got Soul," a nod to Obama. Zaid was named after Zaid Shakur, a Black Panther killed during a shootout with New Jersey police in 1973. Dorn and Ayers also shared legal guardianship of Chesa Boudin, son of Kathy Boudin and David Gilbert. Boudin and Gilbert were former Weather Underground members who later joined the May 19th Communist Organization and were convicted of felony murder for their roles in that group's Brinks robbery. Chesa Boudin went on to win a Rhodes Scholarship. Chesa Boudin is currently a candidate in the 2019 election for San Francisco District Attorney. Chase's father, David Gilbert, received 70 years to life and is currently still incarcerated. Chase's mother, Kathy Boudin, was granted parole on August 20th, 2003, and was named an adjunct professor at the Columbia University School of Social Work. Jeff Jones, one of the founding members of the Weather Underground, resurfaced in 1981 when he was unexpectedly caught up in a police sweep of individuals suspected of participating in the deadly robbery of an armored truck. He and his wife were arrested. Although Jones received probation and community services, the charges against his wife were dismissed. He has worked as a reporter and editor covering New York State politics and policy. He also runs a consulting firm called Jeff Jones Strategies that specializes in media expertise, writing, and campaign strategies that help grassroots and progressive groups achieve their goals. Jones is also working on the board of the financial arm of Movement for a Democratic Society, or MDS, a group that works closely with the new SDS. He is also a member of the Apollo Alliance. Eleanor Raskin, previously known as Eleanor Stein, was a member of the Weathermen and participated in the Days of Rage. She was an adjunct instructor at Albany Law School. Mark Root, a political organizer, mathematics instructor, and member of the Weather Underground, taught mathematics at Central New Mexico Community College and is now retired in Albuquerque. Root has since expressed regret for his role in the Weather Underground and now advocates for nonviolence and electoral change. Kathy Wilkerson, whose father owned the Greenwich Village apartment that exploded on March 6, 1970, taught mathematics in high school and is currently still working with the Students for a Democratic Society. Susan Rosenberg, an activist in the May 19th Communist Organization,
Look at her hair.
was sought as an accomplice in the
I love it.
1979 prison escape of Assata Shakur. She was also accused of driving the getaway car in the Brinks robbery in 1981, in which 2 police officers and an armored car guard were killed. Rosenberg was sentenced to 58 years in prison on weapons and explosive charges. She spent 16 years in prison, during which she became a poet, author, and AIDS activist. Her sentence was commuted by President Bill Clinton on January 20th, 2001. But the connections, particularly between Obama, Dorn, Ayers, and Sidley Austin, are the ones that remain the most unsettling. Another key figure in Barack Obama's meteoric rise was one Newton Minow. Newton Norman Minow, born January 17, 1926, is an American attorney and former chair of the Federal Communications Commission. He was famously known for a speech given to the National Association of Broadcasters convention on May 9, 1961, where he was extremely critical of television broadcasters, essentially referring to television as a vast wasteland. He served as chairman of the FCC from March of 1961 through June of 1963. He was also chairman of the board at RAND Corporation, an American nonprofit global policy think tank created in 1948 by Douglas Aircraft Company. He received a Bachelor of Science in 1949 from Northwestern University and a Juris Doctorate degree in 1950 from Northwestern University School of Law. Minow has long been active in Democratic Party politics. He's an influential attorney in private practice concerning telecommunications law and is also active in many nonprofit, civic, and educational institutions. In 2016, Barack Obama named him a recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He was also assistant counsel to Illinois Governor Adlai Stevenson and has sat on the Board of Governors for the PBS, or Public Broadcasting Service, and its predecessor, National Educational Television. He served as its chair from 1978 to 1980. He's also a recent past president of the Carnegie Corporation, an influential PBS sponsor and the original funder of Sesame Street. In 1953, the Carnegie Foundation was investigated as part of the Reese Committee. The Reese Committee was a congressional investigation of major tax-exempt foundations linked to the international money cartel and centered on the Rockefeller, Ford, Carnegie, and Guggenheim foundations. The hearings were held for 2 weeks. Then, without warning, the committee stopped them. The committee's senior researcher, Norman Dodd, went public about his findings almost immediately after the committee shut down the hearings. The following are excerpts from a 1980 interview with G. Edward Griffin, where he states his findings and the ultimate plans for the taxpayers' contributions to these foundations.
Can you tell us what the Reese Committee was attempting to do? Yes, I can tell you. It was operating and carrying out instructions embodied in a resolution passed by the House of Representatives, which was to investigate the activities of foundations as to whether or not these activities could justifiably be labeled un-American, without, I might say, defining what they meant by un-American. What we had uncovered was the determination of these large endowed foundations through their trustees to actually get control over the content of American education. That we shall use our grant-making power so to alter life in the United States that it can be comfortably merged with the Soviet Union.
Much of PBS's funding came from the Annenberg Foundation, which sponsored the Chicago Annenberg Challenge, of which Barack Obama was a former chairman and Bill Ayers was a co-founder. Minow was a prominent supporter of Barack Obama's candidacy for president of the United States and had even recruited Obama back in 1988 to work for his law firm. In 2015, a report by human rights workers charged that the APA, or American Psychological Association, was collaborating with the Bush administration officials, including members of the CIA, in enhancing the CIA's torture program. The report, drew upon emails from a deceased Rand Corporation researcher named Scott Gerwer. The APA countered the charges that were made by New York Times journalist James Risen and decided to conduct an independent review of whether there was factual support for this claim that the APA was indeed colluding with the Bush administration to promote, support, or facilitate the use of enhanced interrogation techniques by the United States in the war on terror. According to Gerwer's emails, he was working closely with CIA psychologist Kirk Hubbard, who was head of the CIA's Operational Assessment Division and was also a contractor with Mitchell Jessen and Associates, a company linked by Senate investigators to use of torture. One instance of these links between the APA and CIA was the joint sponsorship of a group of workshops on the science of deception held at Rand's Arlington, Virginia offices in 2003. These workshops were organized by Rand's Gerwer, CIA's Hubbard, and APA's then senior scientist Susan Brandon. The CIA claimed that they had no records pertaining to the 2003 workshops, and the New York Times Risen had also failed to release any information pertaining to the event. The Rand Corporation had come under fire before as being the source of the famous Pentagon Papers, as Rand analysts, including Daniel Ellsberg, had been involved in collecting the papers that made up the famous secret history of U.S. policy in Vietnam. The man put in charge of damage control for this situation was Newton Minow. The man put in charge of the APA's controversial independent review was one David Hoffman of the law firm Sidley Austin LLP. But not only was Hoffman connected to Minow through the think tank Rand Corporation and the CIA, as well as the APA, Newton Minow is senior counsel in the Chicago headquartered law firm of Sidley Austin LLP.
I like these tangents into nowhere, and then we come back.
While the Weather Underground claimed to be a grassroots organization, its origins were anything but. Most of their members were young.
No, oh shit. No, don't you fucking dare tell me. I swear to God, if they say the Weather Underground was funded by George Soros, I quit. I fucking quit. If there is any mention of George Soros at any point in this documentary. Oh, God. They're like, these were not just independent people. They were funded by all the people that we hate.
While the Weather Underground claimed to be a grassroots organization, its origins were anything but. Most of their members were young, white, educated, privileged, and well-funded, coming from influential families such as the Ayers, Rockefellers, and Minow. Men like Thomas Ayers knew, in order to achieve true power, it was crucial to involve yourself in every aspect of society: industry, shipping, transportation, technology, intelligence, law, academia, media, as well as being involved in civics and human rights issues and keeping on top of the current cultural zeitgeist. And although the Weather Underground is no more, the influence of Dorn and Ayers and their ideologies remain. Consider Valerie Jarrett, former advisor to President Barack Obama. Her late father, James Bowman, a physician, had a lengthy FBI file showing that he was a communist sympathizer and had communicated with a paid Soviet agent named Alfred Stern. Stern was indicted on espionage charges, conspiring to transmit military and political information to the Soviet Union. Jarrett's mother is Barbara Taylor Bowman, who co-founded a Chicago-based graduate school in child development known as the Erickson Institute. Sitting on the board of trustees of the Erickson Institute is Tom Ayers, Bill Ayers, and Bernadine Dorn. Jarrett's grandfather, Robert Taylor, was also from Chicago and was involved with the Chicago Civil Liberties Committee, along with the communist journalist Frank Marshall Davis, another one of Barack Obama's mentors. Jarrett's grandmother, Dorothy Taylor, was an activist with Planned Parenthood. Obama's Green Job czar, Van Jones, was a senior fellow with John Podesta's Center for American Progress, as well as the Apollo Alliance, along with former Weather Underground member Jeff Jones. These are just a few of many examples of how communist ideology still remains in the United States, much of it beginning in the university level, whose young students work their way into internships and later into partnerships and positions of power in every aspect of our lives, which has led to a heavily biased traditional as well as social media, truly becoming a vast...
You know, last night on his show, Nick was talking about how one of the most, like, he thinks that Trump is going to win. He's not committed to voting for Trump, but he thinks that Trump is going to win. And he doesn't think that really Trump is going to do anything. He's not really excited about it. But the point that Nick emphasized on his show last night, which I actually thought was really, really good, was that the best thing that young men can do right now is go and get jobs in the Trump administration. Like any job, it just doesn't matter. Like get any job you can in the Trump administration to start networking, to get into politics, to start meeting people, to start making connections. And Nick Fuentes is honestly probably the only person that I've actually heard talking about like this far out that's not a leftist, to be honest. He's thinking about like, how do we position people now to be in the positions that I need them to be in 10 years from now, 15 years from now? How do we get them in the door, start building their resumes, start getting them a little bit of power? Nick is basically rolling out the left's playbook. He's doing it in politics. He's not doing it in higher education, but is it a bad strategy? I don't think it is a bad strategy. I think it's probably a really good strategy. And I think it's and he is literally the only person that I've heard talking about this that's not a leftist. This is exactly what the left did with education. They got in through the colleges and universities, they got all the professorships, then they controlled the colleges of education, then they trained all the teachers, and that's how they got the K through 12 schools. There's no reason why the right can't do what the left did, and Nick is the only person talking about it. So maybe it's too little, too late. I hope that I'm right. My position right now is it's probably too little, too late. But it's like I would love to be wrong about that, and the fact that it's too little, too late isn't actually Nick's fault. Nick is young, so he's doing exactly what he should be doing, is what I'm saying. Will it work? I guess we'll see.
Wasteland, its message being spread through the airwaves and online, all with a little bit of legal assistance along the way.
Yeah, Nick isn't a capitalist, though.
In June of 2019, helicopter pilot Tim McCormick died when his helicopter...
Just so you guys know, Nick is not a capitalist, and Nick actually has more socialist tendencies of the national variety than we probably do. But just because we don't agree on that point doesn't mean that we can't unite in the face of a common enemy. And if we ever manage to make progress and overthrow the conservative bullshit establishment, then we can bicker about other things later. That is the strategy that I'm taking. Like, beggars can't be choosers, man. Nick Fuentes is in the only position to actually, like, undo the conservative establishment, which I think is deeply important in terms of beating the left, because there is no way that the left is ever going to be defeated with the current conservative establishment. So what we need to do is we need to put aside the things that we disagree on for right now. We need to come together and unite around this common enemy. And maybe if we work together, we can nicely and cordially bicker about other things later so that we don't end up in the re-education gulag. All right? Maybe dare to dream. Maybe we will all turn on each other someday and we'll end up fighting. Fine. But can we just not for right now?
Helicopter crashed on the roof of a Midtown Manhattan, New York building. Although McCormick was an experienced pilot, he had not submitted a flight plan and was flying in restricted airspace and in close proximity to Trump Tower. The FAA stated that their air traffic controllers did not handle the flight, which was an Augusta A109E helicopter registered to American Continental Properties, LLC, and its chairman, Danielle Bodini, a real estate magnate with strong ties to Rome and the Catholic Church. Still not much is known about the reasoning for this flight, why it was in restricted airspace, and how it crashed in the first place. The helicopter eventually crashed at 787 7th Avenue between 51st and 52nd Street at the AXA Equitable Building and New York offices to Sidley Austin, LLP. Oddly enough, in 2001, the offices of Sidley, Austin, Brown, and Wood were all destroyed in the September 11th attack on the World Trade Center. Just weeks before the attack, Sidley Austin had decided to move its staff of 600 lawyers into a crowded space on 3rd Avenue that would serve as a temporary base for Sidley Austin. An odd move at the time, but a move that would end up saving the lives of over 600 employees. Throughout the decades, law firms such as Sidley Austin have earned themselves a role as a global power player, having a unique and profound effect on global policy, while oftentimes representing some questionable clientele. Whether for better or worse, Sidley Austin LLP has long been a go-to for corporate and government special interest. Currently, Sidley Austin is involved in the college admission scandal, representing Trendera, which is a youth marketing firm, who had allegedly paid $50,000 for someone else to take the ACT college entrance exam. In 2012, Walmart hired former Sidley Austin alumni Jay Jorgensen to become the Senior Vice President and Global Chief Compliance Officer. Over recent years, Walmart has quietly closed nearly 300 of its stores worldwide, publicly announcing that they would be focusing on supercenters and e-commerce, while in other areas claiming that the closures were due to plumbing issues. Much has been made of this issue, with many people claiming that Walmart is conducting suspicious activities in their locations. From talk of tunnel building, unexplained explosions, and military and FEMA equipment being spotted in Walmart parking lots. This theory quickly spread on the internet, with many people documenting their experiences online. This was originally dismissed as a conspiracy theory, but gained steam again in 2018 when Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley made a viral video announcing that young boys were being held at an immigrant detention center at an abandoned Walmart building in Texas.
So I'm standing here in front of Southwest Key Program's Casa Padre, and this is a former Walmart that has been turned into a center for children. So behind those doors inside that Walmart are apparently many hundreds of children.
This disturbing development was promptly blamed on then Attorney General Jeff Sessions, the DOJ, and the Trump administration, although it would seem that Walmart's odd construction practices, suspicious closures, and FEMA-related activities go back to the early 2000s. Given the growing human trafficking problem along border states in Mexico, this may put into perspective the 2012 bribery scandal that occurred with Walmex, a subsidiary of Walmart in Mexico. As far back as 2005, officials at Walmart de Mexico allegedly made hundreds of cash payments to government officials in order to obtain building permits.
This is a really good point, that other Jenny. We're living in an era where the conspiracy theories are about how the government loves us and would never harm us. Again, we took a turn.
In virtually every corner of the country. And while investigators recommended that the probe be expanded, Walmart's leadership shut it down. Then CEO of Walmex, Eduardo Castro Wright, who had been identified as a key figure in the bribery, was instead promoted to vice chairman of Walmart in 2008. This put Walmart's reputation in a tailspin, resulting in an internal investigation into FCPA compliance under pressure from the Justice Department and the Securities and Exchange Commission. Hired to do damage control was Jay Jorgensen in 2012 from Sidley Austin LLP. In February of 2018, then number 3 at the Justice Department, Associate Attorney General Rachel Brand announced that she would be stepping down. This came at a curious time, as Attorney General Jeff Sessions had already recused himself from the Trump-Russia investigation, now leaving only Rod Rosenstein to oversee Mueller's investigation. There was speculation that Brand had grown frustrated with her limited influence at the DOJ, while others think she may have stepped down due to conflict of interest, considering that her husband, Jonathan Cohn, is partner at the same law firm as Tom Green, who is the lawyer for former Trump campaign advisor Rick Gates. That law firm is Sidley Austin LLP. Rachel Brand currently works as Executive Vice President of Global Government and Chief Legal Officer and Corporate Secretary at Walmart. From its origins in Marxism and communism to progressive activism and modern-day socialism, the goals of groups like the Weather Underground have always been clear: to infiltrate society at its root. The nuclear family structure, the educational system, children and youth foundations, human rights organizations, as well as being entrenched in every facet of industry, energy, tech, science, intel, finance and commerce, military, law and law enforcement, print, film, television, and social media, all for the sake of keeping power in the hands of a few under the guise of offering liberation to the common man. Those who would control the weather have always remained underground. One thing is certain: you don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows.
And it's going to mean a lot of white people risking a lot of things when they finally join on the side of the black people and the people of Vietnam and around the world who have already begun the fight.
By creating and establishing re-education centers in the Southwest.
You will see a procession of game shows, formula comedies about totally unbelievable families, blood and thunder, mayhem, violence, sadism, murder, Western bad men, Western good men, private eyes, gangsters, more violence and terrorists.
I don't care about an old washed up terrorist. But as Senator Clinton said in her debates with you, we need to know the full extent of that relationship.
What do you think about the fact that I think you're a terrorist? What do you think about the fact that I think you're a degenerate? You're a degenerate who ought to apologize for what you've done. That's
power belongs to the young people and the black people in this country. Come on, we gotta fight it out. We gotta build a strong base, and someday we gotta knock those motherfuckers who control this thing right on their ass.
All right. Well, that was an interesting conspiracy theory. Now, the reason I was saying wrong at the end is they're combining all these different disparate groups that don't necessarily like each other and that don't really work together and that ultimately do have the same goal. But what that means, it doesn't mean they're working together. It means they're going to fight at some point. So what he did is he combined the radical revolutionary socialists and communists with the WEF globalist Malthusians with, well, essentially the Jews. In his world, I'm not saying I agree with this. I obviously don't. I'm just saying they're combining all of these different groups that do ultimately have the same goal. And it is true that even that one could lead to the other. But like the radical revolutionary socialists don't like the WEF globalist Malthusians. They do not like them. They do not work with them. They'll take their money every once in a while, but it's almost like it's in these roundabout ways where it's just like it's convoluted and it's not as easy as the conservative media makes it. In fact, like when you look at all their proof that that the Soros Foundation is funding all this shit, it ends up being like one person one time worked in an office that got a random grant from this thing, and it's not even the money they would need to fund it anyway. So what I want people to hear is like, okay, that was a fun little conspiracy theory that we watched, but the radical revolutionary socialists are not the same thing as the WEF globalist Malthusians. And I'll tell you, the radical revolutionary socialists really effing hate the Zionists. That's probably a better way to say it, like the Zion. That's probably a better way to say it. The left does not like the Zionists, and the Zionists do not like the left. So these are disparate groups. And while we might agree that separately they are all focused on achieving world domination, that doesn't mean they're working together. And that's actually important to understand, right? And so that's really all I have to say. Anyway, guys, thank you for joining me for the take 2 of the Weather Underground documentaries. I'm appreciative of it. I appreciate the $170 in super chats that you guys sent. Let's keep that up. Let's keep that up. Let's keep that a habit. Okay? Let's keep that a habit. You come to a stream, you enjoy a stream, just send in $5, man. That's all I'm asking. I'm trying to make it work for you and for me. But I especially appreciate all the people who mounted the like. Naruto! Thank you for the $20 super chat. A rare 20. And can I just say, Naruto is like a perfect example of this because you know what he does every single day? Naruto comes into the stream, sends an instant $5 super chat, gives me some random factoid about the day. Like, you know, I'm just saying I appreciate it. A non-binary person, a biological woman, qualified for the U.S. Olympic team. They, them is competing in the women's division. Conservative Twitter is a buzz. They, them should be in the men's division, right? Well, what are they competing in? I'll look into it when I get off. I mean, you know, I guess. Well, I mean, but if they're a non-binary person, a biological woman, if they're a non-binary person, if they're a non-binary person, are they on testosterone? That's actually the real question we should be asking, because a lot of like women who become non-binary end up going on testosterone. They're in the shot put. Are they on testosterone? Does anyone know? They are on testosterone? Well, that's going to get them disqualified. I guess we'll see. Anyway, thank you for the super chat, Naruto. I appreciate it. All right, guys. I will be back tomorrow. Well, actually, I don't know if I will be back. Tomorrow's 4th of July. I may stream tomorrow. I may not stream tomorrow. I'm going to kind of play it by ear. I think if I do stream tomorrow, we're going to bang out the rest of the Evergreen documentary. And so we've actually got a bunch of episodes left to go, but I'm just going to kind of play it by ear. I'm going to see how I feel. Maybe I'm going to wake up and I'm going to want to like cook something on the grill and like hang out and have a couple beers. Maybe that's what I want to do instead. I guess we'll see. Anyway, guys, enjoy your 4th of July. I hope you all have a great time at barbecues and do something outside and touch grass. And maybe you can come back later in the day and maybe we'll stream some of the Evergreen documentary and that'll be fine. And there'll be fireworks and my dogs will be pissed off. Your dogs will be pissed off. Everyone's dogs will be pissed off. But cheers to Independence Day. We're probably going to lose the country to the socialists, but I guess we should enjoy it while we still have it. And I'll see you when I see you guys. I'll make an announcement tomorrow if I'm streaming again. I hope you all have a great rest of your night. See you soon. Bye.